When do the new council members take their seat? Okay, so welcome, and I will start by calling the April 7th meeting of the Town of Frisco Planning Commission to order. Don, will you take roll?
No, actually, not just yet. Both our chair and our vice chair are not present this evening, so the planning commission, the remaining members will have to select somebody to chair the member from their group. Andy's in the magic chair, so I'd suggest that Andy might be a suitable. It's unanimous consent. Thank you, Andy. You can take it from there.
So are you taking roll tonight? Who's taking roll? Oh, there you are, Cheryl. Okay. Cheryl, please take roll.
Franken,
Here.
Commissioner Cabeal,
Here.
Commissioner Stupian, Commissioner Tain, Commissioner Gleason,
Here.
and Commissioner Withrow and Commissioner Lesmus are both absent this evening, but we do have a quorum.
Hey, Cheryl. All right, so the minutes for the previous meeting were distributed. Everybody got a chance to read those? Any changes? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as written? Aye. Okay, minutes will stand. Next up, we will open the floor to public comment. If anybody's here to discuss anything that's not on tonight's agenda, we can open the floor for you right now. Step to the podium, state your business if you have anything that's not on the agenda tonight. Great. Seeing none, we will launch into our first agenda item, planning file number CU 22-0002, a conditional use application for general office space within the Gateway zoning district located at 100 Basecamp Way, unit C101 through C104, Basecamp Shops and Residences, applicant Pinnacle Mountain Homes. Don, you want to tell us all about it?
Little slideshow just to make it, there's no pretty pictures really that go with this one, so we'll just kind of roll through it. But so this application is for a conditional use to use for general office space within the Gateway Zone District. Under the Gateway Zone District, anything that is, since the Gateway Zone District is really intended for retail, retail service uses, things like that, office spaces does require a conditional use. The Basecamp's residences and shops were first approved in 2017 and then constructed in 2018. There was an original conditional use approved for a portion of the Basecamp, and that's where the Pinnacle, they call it the Pinnacle building, and that's where Pinnacle Mountain Homes has their primary office. It's in the same building where Pure Kitchen is, as well as a couple other uses. Across the way from that, in the east building, which is shown on the screen here, there's residences above and then some vacant office space or vacant spaces down below. The applicant would like to utilize those vacant spaces for an expansion of the Pinnacle Mountain office and collective design group. And again, that would be the general office use that would be permitted in here. It's a relatively simple floor plan. Again, there's not a lot to show on this. This is the current condition of that. It's unfinished tenant space. The applicant is proposing to divide that, recombine those spaces into some office spaces for their design group. As far as any conditional use, the applicant should consider these 6 different criteria and as to how their application fits those criteria as well. And then the planning commission and staff will evaluate those to determine whether or not the proposed use is consistent with those or meets each of those 6 criteria. The first one is actually the big one in this particular conditional use. Is the conditional use consistent with the purpose and intent of the zone district in which it is proposed to be located and furthers the goals of the community plan and is a desirable use that will contribute to the general welfare of the community? So the Gateway Zone District, again, the purpose of the Gateway Zone District is really for visitor and service oriented facilities. Same time, guiding principle 2 of the community plan does suggest under the thriving economy principle that we should broaden the town's economic base wherever possible. So you could make an argument that using currently vacant office space for an expansion of a design group that could serve the community and would support this goal. So that's going to be kind of the main criteria that the planning commission needs to think about and consider whether this use is consistent with the intent of the Gateway Zone District. Conditional number criteria 2 and 3 are compatible with the surrounding area. And I would say, yeah, since it's an interior finish, the use is generally compatible. There is other office uses in the area, so I don't see that there's any real concerns with that. Number 4, similar, is this, are there any adverse impacts that need to be mitigated? Again, no, not really, because it's an interior finish. The parking requirements are the same, whether it's office space or retail or restaurant or whatever else. So there's no real concerns there. Conditional use, or I'm sorry, criteria 5 is there adequate infrastructure? Again, since this is a finished tenant space, or I'm sorry, unfinished vacant tenant space in an existing structure, there is no additional infrastructure that is necessary for it. So it certainly meets that criteria. And finally, number 6 criteria is, are there any conditions that may be applicable in order to mitigate any of these concerns or issues that are identified? So with that, staff did go through, and from the staff report, there was a total of 6 recommended findings. The first 3 are, again, using the order of the criteria. Staff did find and has a recommended finding that while the conditional use is not completely consistent with the purpose and intent of the Gateway Zone District, it furthers the applicable goals of the Frisco Community Plan, supports local enterprise, and is a desirable use that will contribute to the general welfare of the community. I'm not going to go through 2, 3, and 4, and 5 because they're, again, very, very basic. Number 6 is a recommended condition, and that is, if required by the town building department, the applicant shall be required to amend the condo plat to combine units 101, 102, and 103 prior to issuance of the CO for the project. So with that, there is a recommended motion for you to consider that's in the staff report, and I'm able to take any questions you may have. Okay.
Robert, do you have any questions?
I do. 2 questions. One, can we make this conditional use for this tenant only, or for this particular use only, so that if they ever moved out, that it would not carry forward to the next person?
You could.
Okay. Secondly, why would we want to see these combined if somewhere in the future we might want to see retail go into those spaces, which would be my preference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hugely in favor of doing this because I think we lose valuable retail space in that area. But if we were to do it, why would we want to combine it, or why would Public Works want us to combine it?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And again, that's where I'm going to defer to the building department, because they are opening up some of these walls, whether the building department will require that those condominium spaces be combined as part of the building permit process. So that's the only question there, and I'm deferring completely to the building department.
And is the building department here today? Okay. I'm done.
So I've got a question. So the proposed layout of breaking it up and showing all the offices shows an additional like 20, at the minimum, 25 employees. I'm not looking at, I think there's 2 conference rooms, design offices. So there's about 25 to 30 employees that are going to be in that potential space. Where are they going to park?
So parking requirements are actually based off on the actual on a square footage basis. And I believe it's 1 parking space is required for every 350 square feet for this particular use. So there is, and that, which is the same that was required for the prior retail from the original approval. So there is no difference in the required parking space per code.
Okay. In the current empty spaces,
Mhm.
so they've never been rented except for Howard Head, which I think is kind of crazy being there because it should be next to like Stedman and be in the medical building, professional building. These haven't, the vacant spaces haven't been rented since they were built. Because what, the rents are too high?
I don't have an answer on that. I think you can maybe, I don't have any real history on what the prior uses were. I believe they have been vacant the entire time. The applicant may have some additional
And
information on
then,
that.
and then two, are these spaces to be rented or bought?
As a condominium, it is platted as a condominium. They could be sold separately as it stands today. But right now, I believe they're still all owned. Actually, no, I believe they're actually owned by Pinnacle, which is, yeah, Pinnacle, not the original developer.
So they own these spaces.
Correct.
So they technically, so they're for rent, like Howard had, it being in that same building. They have a lease, they're renting this space.
Pinnacle owns it, and I think they may be subleasing it to a subgroup of them. Again, the applicant may have some additional information on that.
Yeah, then I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Patrick, questions? No, Rob actually captured most of mine. I'll hold for comments. Okay. Ira, questions for Don?
So essentially, these spaces have been empty since their construction,
I believe so, yes,
and they've been available on the market for rent.
as far as I know.
Thanks, Ira. I don't have any further questions. Don, thank you. At this point, we'll open it up to the applicant. If you'd like to add anything to Don's explanation, or if you'd like to say anything in favor of your project, please state your name and.
My name is Zane Levin. I'm with Pinnacle Mountain Homes and Collective Design Group. Collective Design Group is kind of the sister company to Pinnacle Mountain Homes. Pinnacle Mountain Homes is our construction division, whereas Collective is our interior design and architecture division. So I'm also the architect on this particular application. With that being said, everything that was kind of said by Don is true. The spaces have been vacant since the building was built. My understanding is that they have been on the market for rent since the building was built. I cannot speculate as to why they haven't been filled till now, but we saw this as an opportunity to expand and potentially hire more designers and move across the street in that space. So we have our showroom space with the furnishings on the first floor of the building, the Pinnacle building. And then we would like to move into this new space and have more retail availability and these offices for our designers to be able to kind of commute across the street to and from the showroom space, if you will, if that makes sense. I don't know if I addressed all the questions, but were there any questions for me specifically?
See, Robert, do you have any questions for the applicant?
So there's this clause that says that the building department might require you to combine all these spaces. As the architect, what's your sense of that? Is that what you believe the building department's going to require, or is there a way to avoid that?
So right now, if you actually walk the space, although on the plans we're showing walls, there are framed walls, they are not enclosed to one another. So the building department hasn't required them to be completely separated and fire rated as a partition from space to space. So I honestly can't speculate completely. It could kind of go either way, but my gut is that they would be okay with either kind of setup, whether we kind of minimize them separately or together. And if you all had a recommendation, we could probably pursue that going forward.
And do you see this as a long-term arrangement?
I do. Our company is only growing, and we are excited to have more desks and more space across the street, pending approval. So I see us being in the space doing business, both retail wise and design wise for the foreseeable future.
And if we said no to this, where would you expand into?
We do not have a backup plan at this time.
I'm done.
So your current building is maxed out?
Not maxed out, just from a comfort wise and from being able to help our clients. We see this as being beneficial, being able to have not only desks, but also furniture items in this space. So it's not going to be exclusively office space. It's going to be some retail kind of throughout, even if the desks themselves are the retail pieces, because we are a furnishings company.
You know
some extent.
approximately how many square feet the showroom, the furniture store part is?
So that entire building, I want to say is around 12,900 feet total. Don't hold me to that, but I believe that's the case. So it's 2.5 stories or so. So I would guess that first floor is around 5,000 square feet. Probably 1,500 of that being the Pinnacle Lodging Division, and the remaining, so 3,500 approximately being the showroom currently. That's my best guess, would be 3,500 for the showroom.
3,500 is the actual like furniture store?
That would be my guess at this time, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Patrick?
It was a little ambiguous to me whether you were going to consolidate desks, architects, designers over to this new space, like decant them from the existing space to put more showroom located in one place, desks in another place, or just leave it sort of intermingled.
Likely intermingled. We're like I said, we haven't outgrown our building. We still have plenty of space for the employees, but we're forward looking the future. So we're hopeful that we'd be able to employ more residents of the community and do more design kind of in this space. Does that answer your question?
Thanks.
Ira? Okay. And I don't have any further questions either. Thank you. At this point, we can open the floor up to any public comments. If you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and what you think of the project we're looking at. Anyone have any comments? Anything online coming in? Or we are hybrid,
Not
right?
seeing anything online.
Okay, then we will close the public comment portion, and we will move on to, I guess, commissioner discussion. We can have a little discussion before we entertain a motion. Robert?
This is an awkward one for me because I believe that I think the base camp is has such great potential, and that it's hard for me to give up the fact that retail could go down into this area and we could continue to have the vibrant space that I think it has become. I also understand that the space has been empty for quite some time, and that's not necessarily the best particular use. So I'm sort of torn on this one. I think I could be talked into voting for this with the condition that the conditional use was only for this particular, even though it's not really a tenant, it is a tenant of some kind, and that the space not be broken or be condominiumized into a single unit. That I think that then would limit any future retail into that space should Pinnacle ever decide to leave and consolidate somewhere else. So those are sort of the two that I think make some sense for me.
I think I'd agree with that. I mean, I think we're looking at highest and best use, right? What's certainly office space is better than vacant space. Donna, what are your thoughts?
I'm just curious why. Well, and I believe that the town has lost so much potential space, commercial space, that when this building was proposed and with the whole base campus, this is gonna add vibrancy and restaurants and, and so I just don't understand that, maybe if it's been vacant for 3 years, I don't know how many years, let's say if it's been vacant for 3 years, and if it was rented for X amount of dollars, instead of holding out for this amount of dollars, they would have been ahead of the game. And so I just don't know the mechanics, of it. I'm trying to figure out that if the current building is not maxed out, yeah, this would be nice. Is it really necessary? Are they gonna move to Silverthorne and build their own new building? no, we want to keep them here, of course, but to keep it retail and not office. I mean, the idea of having an office, it's just kind of defeating the whole purpose of even having it. And that's why I was wondering if there's a way that the actual furniture store could go in there. It would be a store and keep the offices in the Pinnacle building. You know, at least to try and, you know, yeah, it's nice that it's on the first floor and it's a showroom and they have their interior design people and this and that. But if people just want to buy furniture, let them go in, you know, and I'm just trying to think of a win-win, you know, situation. You know, I'm concerned, you know, about the extra 25 employees and parking and that sort of thing. I just wish that those spaces were rented to cool little, you know, and what's nice is they're all different sizes and they're really kind of cool. But what's also interesting about that building, from what I understand for the residents, that there are problems in that building, like leaks and this and that have never been fixed. And it's, you know, it's like, oh, you know, what's going on with that building? So, but in regards to those spaces, I mean, I would love to be able to keep them as spaces, but without knowing all the details and the whys and the whats, and if they are owned by Pinnacle and they're being rented as opposed to bought as condo. I mean, I'm for keeping it the way it is, but to try and be creative and keep it as a store, retail, as opposed to offices. So if the furniture store went in there, then that'd be cool. Compromise.
Patrick?
Yeah, you know, first off, we all know what would be lovely, right? Which
Yep.
would be a bunch of small little boutiques. But vacancy is nobody's friend. So right now, highest and best use is fill the space. I'm not worried about the parking. You know what? There's worse problems in this world. I'd rather see the space full and have a parking lot that has people driving around in it than vacant space. I would like to see the space also stay capable of subdivisions. I'm also in favor of occupying it in such a way that it can be easily re-subdivided should they decide to vacate and go somewhere else. That goes beyond walls. That actually trickles, most importantly, through things like fire suppression systems and such. So if they're not done right now and they have to be done to get up to code, they need to be put together in a way such the next tenant, it's not prohibitive to undo that and make it separated. It should be built such that it could be, that it's for 1, 2, 3 compartments.
Sure.
No matter how it's programmed or operated, that's a different conversation. But so I think that there's a way to put that conditional language together that says through and through should be able to be re-subdivided.
Yeah.
I also think that it's not beyond reason to put a condition that some component of the retail side of this business be part of that new space. It's a very large space when you consider all 3 pieces of it. You could say, you know, our dining division is there or whatever. You could pick any number of things, or, you know, the custom fabric section. You go over there and you talk to those people, there's a desk, you sit down, that's where you make your custom orders. You guys figure it out. But there's something that says it's actually retail as opposed to just being filled with desks because you blow up in a quick hurry, you know, or trade an apple for an orange from across the street, because that's really what you're asking for anyway. It's not prescribed. So, yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Ira?
Patrick put it very well. The history shows that the place is vacant, and I think having it used is important. I see that with designers and architects occupying this future space, I almost see them as rainmakers, like they were saying, for the retail side, for the furniture piece. So as Patrick said, I think that either crafting it now that it be physically constructed for deconstruction back into 3 condos is the way to go. I think that benefits the space as well as the ownership of it. And having a condition of the use to the occupant, I'm in favor of that, so that it doesn't, it's not a benefit that can be sold and rented with in the future. So for the most part, with some sketching around, I'm okay with it.
I don't have too much to add. I kind of feel the same way. I think I'd like to see it stay as 3 separate units at least, certainly from a functional standpoint, from a system standpoint, and from a legal standpoint. I think it makes sense to keep them separate. And I like the idea of the conditional use terminating if this business ever leaves the space. But yeah, I agree. I'd rather see somebody in there.
All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
I'd rather see it being used than vacant. And I think that, this will get people in and out of the buildings through doors that haven't been used yet. I think that's a great idea. I do like the idea of trying to keep some retail in there. If we could at least, have sort of a little bit more of a looking at the library, but of the lobby presence, whereas you walk in, you're sort of greeted with a little bit more retail experience, right? As you walk in the door, people might just wander in there. It might be a nice thing for them to not just walk up to somebody's desk. So I'd agree that if we could keep some retail in there, certainly right at the doors, and keep that at least a little bit more of a retail presence as people come in the space, that would be nice. But overall, I think that it makes sense to get people in there and get that space used. So I think in general, I'm in favor of this as long as we can get some conditions figured out, Robert.
So I hear 3 conditions so far. Let me see if I can articulate them and see whether the rest of us agree. One is that it's for this tenant only, or however we call it that. And that the 3 units stay separate, and that any fire suppression put in or any other alarm systems that be put in such a way that the units are separate and could be utilized separately. So rented separately or sold separately.
So just to clarify, if I could throw it there, I don't think it's just going to be fire suppression. You're also looking at mechanical systems, how those balance.
Yeah.
I think it may be challenging to have 3 separate mechanical systems in a space like that where it is an open flow area. But that's
Mechanical is one, that's easy to duct together and you can balance it and take it back apart. But if you have
Am I allowed to still comment?
Let me put the third out there. And the third one is that a retail component in at least one of the spaces is an imperative. And that it stay a retail space for the duration of the conditional use. I'm learning something because we did put some conditions on another space and they haven't always been lived to. And we haven't been able to, not to mention any names, but so those are the 3 that I've heard come across this body.
Okay. Hey, you'd like to add something? You want to step to the microphone?
Again, Zane Levin with Pinnacle Mountain Homes and Collective Design Group. And I believe Philip Metzger has something to say about the retails as well. But with the mechanical systems and the fire suppression, my understanding is that as it stands today, they are currently fire suppressed separately, and the mechanical heating systems are also separate for each of those units. So our intent is to kind of keep that as is, still keep those separate per se, albeit one single space. So I don't see that being a problem going forward.
So does everybody else sort of agree with those 3 conditions? I mean,
I'm curious how we work the one about enforcing retail in a space. Is that something we can actually enforce?
So I did have a comment on
I
that.
don't want to keep putting conditions on there. You go.
I'm Philip Metzger with Pinnacle Mountain Homes and Collective Design Group as well. And actually, to your point, we have just that capacity in mind. So in service to our retail on our first floor of our Pinnacle building, pulling interior designers, but a mixed use into this new conditional space would be there to support that. So whether that interaction with that client starts at the retail across the street in the existing Pinnacle space, and then they exactly decide on a sofa that's custom, they bring fabrics, those are already intended to come over there as well. That's where they're choosing those fabrics. That's where they're making sure dimensionally it fits in their home, whether it's the condominiums above the space or a home down the street, right? So that's all in support to help make those sales a little bit more successful and profitable for both the client as well as us, and really support that interior design function with the whole weight of our business suite behind it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think it is going to be a bit self-regulating. They're not going to want to put offices right in the big display windows. They're going to want to put nice looking furniture in front of those big windows, and they're going to want to put the desks tucked away and out of the way. So I think, you know, they're going to find the best way to use this space because it's in their best interest to use those windows in the display. So
But according to the proposed floor plan, there's desks right there.
well, they're all design offices and who knows what's going on in there. Like you said, you know, if it's where you're laying out fabrics and you're picking fabric swatches and you're going through those types of discussions, there is a retail component to that. Again, it's not that I'm opposed to that condition, Robert. I just don't know how exactly we word that and enforce it. The other two I think are pretty enforceable.
I think that at least we can put, we have learned that we can put a condition on that doesn't necessarily get lived by. I think it's still important to put the condition on to say that this commission at least believes that there needs to be visible retail in that whole space. And if I hear Pinnacle correctly, they hear us and you know, hopefully they'll live by what we say, and even if it's a condition that somebody can go back to and say, you know, you're supposed to be doing this, it may or may not be enforceable, but at least it gives the sense of what we're trying to accomplish as a body.
Any other thoughts on those three conditions?
The only other thing that I would add as staff is on the condominiumization plat, that would have to come back before the planning commission anyways.
No, it would not.
It would not.
If they wanted to,
Administrative, okay.
So right now it stays as is, but you're saying they could change it without coming from the commission? Correct. Okay. Yeah.
Except if we put a condition on it.
Unless you put a condition on it.
So but I could try a motion. And then you can just clean it up for language. With respect to file number CU 22-0002, I move the recommended findings set forth in the April 7th, 2022 staff report with the additional conditions that this conditional use is for this tenant only and will go away, or is this for this tenant only? Number two, that this stay as 3 separate units, including its mechanical and fire suppression systems. And 3, that a retail component continue to exist in at least one of the spaces, one of the 3 spaces. And that the planning commission hereby approves the request for a conditional use application for office space / retail within the Gateway GW zoning district located at 101 Base Camp Way, units C101, C102, C103, C104, Base Camp Shop and Residences, including the conditions noted in the staff report.
Okay. Second. Cheryl, do you want to take a vote?
Commissioner Franken,
Yes.
Commissioner Chain,
Yes.
Commissioner Stabile,
Yes.
Commissioner Gleason,
Yes.
Commissioner Stupian,
No,
Okay. So motion carries and passes. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. Moving on, I think I have the full agenda in front of you. It's Fifth Avenue next, right?
It is. So the next application is MAJ 22-002.
A review of the sketch plan step of the major site plan application for a proposed new multifamily project located at 307 South Fifth Avenue, lot 123, block 26, Frisco Town subdivision. Applicant Abigail Plain House Architecture, and Susan, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, temporary chair. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the introduction there. This application is a major site plan review for a excuse me, a multifamily project to be located at 307 South Fifth Avenue. This will be a 4-unit development that's split out into 2 buildings. Each unit is 3 bedrooms with a 2-car garage. This property is located currently the Red House that everybody's probably familiar with on Fifth Avenue, just west of on the west side of Fifth Avenue and the west side of the bike path. You can see the bike path here. And for that reason, it has actually 3 frontages along rights of way along Teller Street here, the Frisco Street Alley here, and South Fifth Avenue. Because of the bike path, early on, staff identified that the accesses should all be located and coming off the unbuilt right of ways of Teller Street and the Frisco Street Alley, rather than creating additional accesses across the rec path, and the application does reflect that. So we're pleased to see that. This structure was originally built in 1960, the existing residence there, and it will be completely demolished and removed as prior to construction. There is no historic designation and it was not identified on the town's historic inventory either. So there's no real historic value to it. The site plan here. So development standards. So this application as presented, it is located in the RH residential high density zone district, which allows a total of 16 units per acre as a quarter-acre site. This does allow 4 units, and so it does meet that. The application is, as presented, does appear to be consistent with the community plan and zoning, specifically density setbacks, lot coverage, and height portions of the development code. The development standards. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky, and is where the planning commission would like to get some feedback to the applicant as it relates to development standards. Facade standards, including duplicate building design, is probably the biggest key here. Looking at it, there is a question of whether or not there is some mirroring that might be apparent. This is the east elevation, which will be most visible from Fifth Avenue and most of the project. There is some similarity in materials and scale to newer buildings in the area. The building envelopes that are used to break up the facade include balconies and patios and covered entrances and eave overhangs. There is some fairly significant changes in textures and materials again as well, and are intended to break up that facade. However, we would like some feedback to provide to the applicant on the scale, design, proportions, site planning, landscaping, materials, and colors as shown in the application, as well as if this application is meeting the duplicate building design standard. Roof standards. Similarly, the roof standards do require that the roof pitches are between 412 and 212, and that is the case in this particular application. There is a parapet roof element that goes around the rooftop decks, which is actually better seen in the oblique angle in the next view here, that may appear on some levels to be a mansard roof. So we'd like some feedback from the planning commission on whether or not the roof standards are being met on this application. And again, you can see here where that may be the case there. Building materials and colors, again, it does show a combination of vertical boards and board and batten siding, a stacked stone, steel posts and beams and rafters. The materials generally appear to be consistent with the development standards in the code. But certainly any feedback you may have on that would be appreciated as well. So finally, feedback requested from the planning commission on this application. We'd like some input on proposed scale, design, proportions, site planning, landscaping, materials, and color shown, the duplicate building design standards, roof pitch standards, and the building material standards. With that, I can happy to answer any questions. I do have the full plans available on the screen too, if you'd like to point out or have a question on this particular sheet.
Thanks, Don. Questions for Don? Ira, you want to start?
What is that? A rose is a rose? That roof to me
Name?
is a mansard. I mean, oh, I'm sorry, questions, thanks. Yeah, no questions this time. Okay. I'm
Patrick, any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay.
No questions.
I only have one, and it's a rhetorical question, I'm sure. We have no, having looked at this, it feels really awkward because we go from residential high density to residential low density. And when you look at this area, we're going to go from this massive building down to these kind of everyday homes. And it feels really awkward. And we have no transition zones whatsoever in this town.
This is the transition.
That was my question.
I didn't necessarily see a question in there, but I would agree that there is not some clear transitions between residential, high residential.
And it feels awkward to the people who live just beyond this and have had homes there for some period of time. And there is no, so I'll put it into the form of a question. So there is no way of dealing with that in the work that we're trying to do here.
Not without a change to how the code is written, because right now the code does allow for a very high density or not, and 16 dwelling units an acre isn't very high density, but it is higher than the adjacent zone district, which is 4 dwelling units an acre. So there is not without a change to that to require on those border areas some transitioning, but that is not currently in the code.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Okay, thanks, Robert. I don't have any questions. Thanks, Don. So at this point, did I see somebody raise their hand? What was that?
But there's, it's not yet.
Abby
time
Plain,
for-
the applicant, is remote this evening, so she would be next up.
I don't think it's the time for public comment just yet, but Ms. Smith, if you can just wait a minute, we will open the floor up to public comment in just a couple minutes. I think at this point, we're going to turn it over to Abby Plain to hear the applicant presentation. Abby?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good to see all of you. Thank you for taking on this new project. I think a lot of the basics have been covered by the staff report. I just want to kind of touch base on the comments and questions that kind of came up afterwards. And everything that was said in the staff report is accurate. The size of the building, that transitional zone, right? As we said, we're building in the recommendations of or within the zoning of the property. There is a fourplex 2 townhome development right behind this. So we are matching the size and the scale of that as well. So we're going along with what's already there. As far as a transitional zone, I'm not familiar with anything like that, but I know we are within the zoning, and we're trying to match or not match or just complement what's already there as far as the development right behind us. The duplicate building, if you look at the site plan or the plans, nothing's duplicate, but I can see where there is some question there, and that can be broken up a little bit differently. There was intention in trying to change that scale, but we are super tight with the bulk planes on this project. So there has been some limitation on that, on what our ability is. The mansard roof, and we can talk about definition of mansard roof. It didn't even cross my mind that that would be qualify as a mansard, but as an architect, and when I'm dealing with these new kind of design developments as far as roof decks are concerned, I'm trying to figure out a way especially in these lower density residential areas, to not use flat roofs, like just a standard flat parapet roof element, and to try to bring that scale down with a sloped roof or try to hide it as much as possible. So we are kind of adhering to the neighborhood standard rather than the higher density commercial district or mixed use districts there. So that was my intent with installing those. We can, you know, you can tell me if you think that that qualifies as an answered, but that was my intent, was to eliminate the flat parapet roof element and try to blend with the neighborhood better, while also adapting to those roof decks that buyers and clients want. So that was my design challenge there. So I think that was all the questions that I heard so far, but I'm happy to answer anything else as they come up.
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for the applicant?
On the pictorial ones, what looks like stucco, is that a wood product?
Yeah, so the materials would be stone. It would be like a vertical board and batten. There would be some brown and gray barnwood in there as well. And I think we have a horizontal 3-inch cedar siding as well. So no stucco.
I still have I have an issue that it looks to me like a mansard roof where, if I'm not mistaken, like that roof is covering the side of the building as a mansard would as it goes up. I mean, I think I'm seeing it right, that the top plate is higher than the window. I'm looking at the elevation above the garages. So it would seem to me that the top plate is above the windows. And then as you turn the corner, I could only describe that as a mansard looking roof. I mean, maybe it is or isn't, but I don't know. There's something about it that just, and I can't put it into words, but there's something about it that just doesn't appeal to me. That's about it. Although I like the color palette overall.
Sure. Is it just the mansard part that it flattens out at the top? That's concerning?
I don't like the way the roof climbs the whole side of the building.
Gotcha. And that is because of the bulk plane 45 that's more restrictive in that front area. So that's where that that climbing comes from, is because of that bulk plane. So okay, got it.
Any other questions? for
No,
Abby?
that's it.
Okay. Patrick, questions for Abby?
Just a little clarification on the materials. So when I'm looking at the board at the last page on the deck,
Mhm.
and I'm looking at numbers, well, the numbering's a little bit ambiguous too, but bottom right is 3 vertical siding. So that says trestle wood thermal brown. That one I understand. But
Yeah.
then the other one to me is vertical. I guess the 2 fell off. I don't see the 2
Oh.
there. But 2, I assume, is the gray and the vertical brown stick that are on the picture. Those to me look like more of the barnwood description.
Yep.
reclaimed. But you also talk about a gray and a brown. The gray I totally understand. It's the middle one that has me a little bit concerned. If indeed that's reclaimed, if there's really browns, are you proposing that stuff gets clear coated, like with a matte clear finish? So it
Right.
stays the way it gets installed, because it'll change, as you well know.
Oh,
in
yeah.
12 to 18 months and look totally different.
Absolutely. Yes, it's clear coded. And I can add a note on the elevations and the color board as well, to add that clear coat on there, just to make sure that that's covered. But yes, that's the intent, is to keep that variation in color.
Appreciate it.
Because then otherwise it just all turn into gray. So
Yep, that's what I was thinking too.
yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
That's all.
Thanks, Patrick. Donna?
I just have a question. The access to the garages
Mhm.
coming two off the street, two off the alley. Is the reason they are coming off of those two locations because it's a they're 3-bedroom units, and you're designating 2 indoor spaces and 1 outdoor space for each unit?
That was asked of us from the planning commission to, and the different agencies, is to come off those 2 alleys. We were initially proposing to come off of Fifth Avenue there on at least 1 unit, I believe. But because it's crossing that the trail that's right there, they wanted that off. So that was the intent of having them both off the alleys.
But when I'm looking at the parking,
Mhm.
it shows 2 indoor spaces, and then it says unit 3, the 1 parking space is outside.
Sure.
I mean, that's the way that your intention is.
Yes. Yeah. 2 units inside the garage, 1 parked tandemly on the outside.
Okay, and the only reason that I was looking all this, and I'm looking at the footprint
Yeah.
of the lot, the developable lot limit. One of the comments that had come up that from Ira, that the building looked so big, even though it's still 2 separate buildings. I thought, oh, I wonder, had you considered moving the actual physical buildings further out towards the alley and towards the street to come in the middle? Because then it'd be more space between the buildings, which then would give more light. But
Sure.
that's why I was asking about that 3rd parking space, and I don't think you could accommodate that. But I was just trying to get more space between the buildings, because then it wouldn't look as massive. So I was just kind of wondering.
Right. Yeah, we're limited there, and we couldn't do, even if we didn't use it as a access point because of the trail, we're right up against that.
Yeah, I was just sort of curious, trying to, to react to the comment about the mass, even though it's 2 buildings, it's, it kind of, on Fifth Avenue, looks like 1 continuous building.
Sure. And something we could discuss is on that Fifth Avenue side with those taller roof pitches. I could propose put some dormers or something more, articulate that roof plane better, but that would have a small bulk plane encroachment. So, if you feel like that would be conducive to getting the needs met there, that is an option, and that would help bring that scale down, hopefully, as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Don. Robert.
And I was just gonna compliment you on no buck plane encroachments. So then you
I
start talking
try.
about it. Is there anything gonna happen to Teller Street? I mean, that I know that's not totally within your purview, but now that there would be 2 buildings down there, is that street going to look like something a little bit more real? I mean, it kind of, when I first drove by it and looking for this, I thought,
Yeah.
oh, is that the lot we're talking about? And then I realized, no, that's the right of way.
Right. Right.
And it looks sort of junky, to put it mildly. Is there anything in plans for that Teller Street to be pushed through, or to look more like a street?
I don't have anything on our plans. It's not required of the developer, but and I don't know, I'm trying to remember with our DRC meeting if Public Works had any intention on developing that or paving it, which they did not. I don't think they did, and you guys and planning can comment on that if they know any more. But
the other thing is and I've seen some of your projects, and you've got one going right behind me, so I look at it every day as it was being built. And I really like some of the work that you do. I don't know how. I mean, you heard me talk about the transition zones, and I know that you don't have to worry about that. You're building to the code that we have set as a town. But is there any way to kind of make the bulk of this, especially the bulk against the alley, feel less bulky? Because, I mean, I can't imagine how the neighbors that are just to the south of this building feel. The building behind you, which has the same amount of bulk, but because of where it sits on that, on their property, doesn't affect that neighborhood quite as much as this building is going to, at least in my, as I viewed it. I don't know if there's any way that you can deal with that, but it feels like there's just, it feels so stark in the way that it's going to sit across the alley from you.
Are you concerned with, like, if we're just talking about the south side, like, let's just talk about the south
Right.
side, how it just goes deck, and then, I mean, there's variation, but more,
Right.
are you saying you want to see like a little bit more stepping of the building towards?
It would be nice to see a little bit of stepping. And I know that may be hard to do, and I know that you're limited in what you can do on that property, but it just feels like if I'm the neighbor right to the south of you, across the alley, that feels like a lot of building just staring me in the face all of a sudden.
Mhm. Yeah, I can definitely look. It would be probably something articulating that deck area to
Right.
create more of a, it's that balance of, I can articulate that deck area more to give it more of an enclosed feel a little bit from the street side and from that south side, but then that's adding more bulk. So I don't,
I understand.
yeah, so I will definitely look at
It's just
that.
it's just a question more than
Sure.
anything else.
Yeah, I'll definitely look at that.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Robert. I'm not sure who's controlling the slides, but can we pull up the third rendering that shows up in our packet real quick?
And Abby, I also give you co-host abilities if you need to pull anything up.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have a sheet in mind, Andy?
Well, there's no numbers on it. It's of the packet that we were given, it's page 14, I think. It's, yeah.
Is it also on this one? On this one?
That one there?
Yeah, it's, well, yeah.
It's-
one of those.
I don't know if you're sharing.
It's also on the set of plans, down near the
Here we go.
bottom.
Now we're looking at the right area, but scroll down a little bit. I think we need that one. Let's
That
take a look at that one. Abby, can you tell me what direction we're looking from? I've kind of tried to wrap my head around this and I think I have it, but can you confirm which direction we're looking from here?
Yeah, the long side is the west side, so that will be away from the street.
Okay, so that roof above the porch there on the west side, I think is one, it's certainly in my mind, that stands out as sort of being this mansard looking
Mhm.
roof that maybe doesn't fit the town. If I scroll back and I look now, if we can look at the west elevation on sheet A7,
Mhm.
it seems like the roof plan is different.
Let's see.
I'm wondering, are these drawings, yeah, scroll down on that lower right corner and we're looking at that same west elevation. And now there's a shed roof. And scroll over. Now there's a shed roof on that third level. That didn't show up in the other, in the perspective renderings. And it seems not the one that's poking out to the left, but the one that's coming right at us.
Right, yeah, right over the bathrooms. That was added last minute, and so it might not have found its way onto the rendering, but yes, that was added.
So that changes that roof line quite a bit.
Correct.
And also pokes through the bulk plane from what I can tell.
No, it's within the bulk plane. Everything is.
But the roof that it's protruding out of is
Mhm.
right on the bulk plane line.
I don't.
I mean, if we look at, so that would be the south elevation, right?
Yeah, go to the south.
So if we look at the south elevation, you can see that roof on the left that's basically drawn to the bulk plane, and that's the roof that would have a shed roof sticking out of it to the left.
Correct.
Right.
I can pull up a section if that helps you of that area. But it
Look.
comes right
What I think,
behind,
you know,
yeah.
I don't know that we necessarily have to save this right now, but
Sure.
I feel like there's a little bit of discrepancy between these elevations and the model. And it's making it hard to evaluate the bulk plan. And I also think it's making that roof look worse on your perspective rendering.
True.
So I would just encourage you to, let's make sure that's all coordinated for the next round so that we can accurately evaluate bulk plane and the shape of that roof. Because I think those two different drawings are giving us two different signals on that corner. And I didn't get all the way around the whole rest of the building, but
Sure.
it seems like there might be a couple of those shed roofs up high that got added late. And those are gonna, it seems like are gonna poke through that bulk plane, at least the way it's looking right now. So obviously, you know, some folks up here would really not like to see that poking through the bulk plane. So
No,
make
and
sure
that's,
we-
yeah,
some
sorry.
may not mind it.
That is my intent.
So yeah, I just wanted to check on that because I think that's going to go in a couple of directions. It's going to help those sort of mansard looking roofs by showing those high shed roofs. But I also wonder what that's going to do to the bulk plane. So I just want to make sure we get that right on the next one. The other thing, if we can scroll back down to those renderings real quick. So this rendering, you can kind of see off to the right as we kind of go down the roof line, there's this vertical siding fin that sticks up kind of, I can point to, yeah, right in there. And if we scroll to a couple of the other elevations, we see those poking up in a couple places, and they're a little hard to kind of understand from these renderings. That one is kind of one of the most obvious. What are we seeing there?
It's the flat roof. And quite honestly, I used a different subcontractor to develop these. So I need to, it should be the flat roof that it won't be sticking into the bulk plane at all. So it should be a sloped, sloping with that roof that's right there, that shed roof.
Okay.
Yeah.
From these renderings, it looks like these sorts of fins that come out for no apparent reason.
No,
Want to
no.
make sure that we're not going to end up with
No, no.
okay, and then the one last, well, I guess this is more of a comment, so I'll save that for a
Sure.
comment. But I don't have any further questions for Abby. So does anybody have
I did
follow-up
one
questions?
follow-up
Yeah.
one that I missed earlier. I was looking and I probably missed it, but where is the trash enclosure, or are those by unit?
They're going to be toters.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
5 units is what we're
It's fewer than
requiring.
5
Units, so it's enclosure is not required.
Good
yeah,
enough. Thank you much.
yeah.
Follow
I
up,
have one question. You know, when we did the property back behind me, actually, on Galena Alley, did we not put a condition on that, that those have to be, that they have to arrange with the garbage company to waste company to have in garage pickup?
You're right. Yes, we did.
We did.
Yeah.
So we could do something similar here if, assuming these are not going to be all owner occupied, 100% residential occupied.
Yeah, yeah, they will be sold. And so we did do that with the Galena Street townhomes.
Right.
So
It was a condition we put on that.
because there was a concern with the neighboring property, how they had to come back in and put
Right.
the trash enclosure. Yeah.
We are. Yeah, so we're just a sketch plan right now.
So,
So we
yeah,
would bring that.
you would be
remember
open,
that
you would
for-
be open to doing that, right, Abby?
Yeah, that worked fine for the last one. We can add it to the HOA documents when that's submitted.
Thanks, Robert. Any
I'm
other
good.
questions for Abby? Great. Thanks, Abby.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you.
So at this point, we will open it up to public comment. If there's anybody here that has anything they'd like to add to this discussion, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less if you can.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Mhm.
I'm Sherry Steve Sadaklik, and I actually live south of this project. have for 27 years. And it's so good to meet Abby virtually and hear her thoughtful consideration of design. It certainly is seeming that the structure paired with the other one adjacent to it is pretty ominous. With it being low density where I live and it being residential high right across the alley. There seems to be some disconnect there in the neighborhood. So my house is on the corner of 5th and Frisco Street to give people kind of a perspective of where I'm at. It's a single story house. And so our landscape is changing, and I'm excited about some of the evolving changes in Frisco. But I'm also somewhat concerned that having these two very large structures, you know, just across the alley from our property, it feels imposing. You know, it doesn't feel like our small town of Frisco community anymore. It's starting to feel like, you know, we're just building these massive buildings that max out the potential for square footage. And there's not necessarily a buffer in the way that the zoning is taking place in Frisco. So Robert, I appreciate your comments. I've never met you, but you spoke exactly what I was thinking. I do really feel that that is going to be a bit tricky for cars coming out of the alley. It's unpaved. There's no yield or stop sign to get across. And gosh, a couple of years ago, a child was hit at the corner of Frisco and 5th. They were coming down 5th. The other vehicle was coming down Frisco. But I think with the increased traffic that we have, both pedestrians with visitors and also you know, people using the bike paths very frequently, accessing the alley and then also Teller coming across there with that bike path, I think is something that's going to require some consideration of how to make that safe for both pedestrians, drivers, and bikers. So thank you all. Your thoughtfulness as a longtime resident and homeowner is really heartwarming. I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment?
I'm one of the other neighbors. I live at 500 Teller. My name is Megan Mulqueen, and I have lived there since 1988. And I am well aware that we have zoning areas and that this is a transitional spot. And like she mentioned, there is this, unfortunately, that alley is the changeover from high density. And so it is dramatic for people like us who have lived there for so long, as well as the people who go through there on a regular basis and perceive it as a certain safety zone and level of comfort when they go through. And so there are those things to consider, and as well as what it looks like for the town. And I haven't really had I loved looking at the 3D pictures because it gave me a different perspective. And from the street side, which is what I will be looking at from my house, it reminds me of the developments in Silverthorne. And with the front door having the tiny little, covering over the little roof, the tiny roof and the tiny door and the windows that are, you know, all in a line, and the development lines that are all just uniform. It does truly remind me of a big box on the side that everyone sees, as well as what you see from the alley. And if they could have some more visual changes besides the textures, I think that that might help soften the blow into the lower density maybe, but it's going to be dramatic and shocking. And I think we want something that we will be happy with and proud of for years to come. And I think that we have done a really good job over the years. And so many of my other neighbors have said, it's going to be great. Frisco does a good job. And I want it to be that way. And I think that maybe with a few of those kind of changes and visual enhancements, that maybe we can come to something that we can live with and make people feel comfortable with. Another thing that I would like to address is that during the course of the development, I would hope that they would keep their equipment and employees and vehicles and everything somehow condensed. And you know, I also worry about the bike path, and I also worry about the trees and the trees that Frisco has put in on the east side of Fifth that we all take care of and water every day. I don't want those to die. And so I would like them to be considerate of where they park their equipment for the next couple of years. Because I know it's going to happen. I just want it to be fabulous and for us all to be really proud. So maybe this can evolve a little bit more. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? I know we had a hand up earlier.
That person has left.
Okay, sorry. Anyone else with public comment online or in the room? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion and we will move into a discussion.
Oh, wait, we now have a hand
We
raised.
have a hand back up. Okay, Chuck,
We'll go.
what do you have to say? State your full name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, Chuck Drake. My address is 215A Galena Street. So I'm a few blocks off of Fifth and a few other blocks down further from the development. And the next item on the agenda is the one that's going to be built directly across from our house. I mirror the sentiment of the lady right before me about particularly the amount of horror that can happen with all the equipment and trucks. And I witnessed that firsthand on the gigantic development here on Galena Street when the Feldman properties were being built. I think it was 11 or maybe 12 units. And it was an absolute disaster. The amount of sound that they created, as well as going way over the limits in terms of the town. If I'm not mistaken, you're not allowed to start building until 7 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, well, that wasn't adhered to. And they are supposed to cancel at 7 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And what recourse do we have other than what we had to do was we had contacted the police. And is that the only thing that we can do? And I'm being, forward thinking to the next slides coming up when this goes up directly across from my house. But anyway, I just wanted to share my sentiment with the lady before me about the equipment and, just hope that the construction folks do their best.
Thank you. I don't know how much we can address of that at the planning level.
Yeah,
but,
I can answer. Yes, it is an ordinance. So it is under the noise ordinance. So the only way to really enforce that is to call in a noise complaint through the police department. Certainly as part of our, I think, construction management, it's going to be, as we're getting denser and denser and filling in a lot of these spaces, it's going to be more and more of a challenge. As part of any set of building plans, we do require that there is a construction management plan showing how the construction is going to be contained, and so to minimize the impact. Certainly the Fifth Avenue, the bike path along Fifth Avenue is going to be of great concern. I go up Fifth almost every single day on my way home. So when they pulled the Airstream that was sitting there for 30 years or so, it sat on the street and the snowplows had to go around it for quite some time. So it is going to be a challenge, and certainly we will do our part as best as we can from the building side to ensure that they are following the construction management.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, sir, step to the podium, state your name and address.
Thanks for putting together the meeting tonight. My name is Scott Campbell. I'm with Campbell Construction and Engineering. We are the contractor selected to do 307 South Fifth Ave along with 212 Galena. So hopefully I can address your concerns as well as Chuck's. We are going to take in special consideration with the bike path and keeping equipment off the roadway and figuring out parking for our workers. You know, I'm Summit County local. I've been up here for 20 years. Campbell Construction's been up here for much longer than that. And, you know, we're a family company. And, you know, being Scott Campbell, my father's Pete Campbell, we have a huge investment in the community and we want to make sure that everybody's concerns are addressed. We are very restrictive with our contractors, our subcontractors, our 1099 guys with the 7-to-7 rule. And we do everything in our power to not run generators and try and get temp power set up prior to construction so that we don't have as much sound with generators and things running along with diesel smoke and things of the such. So we will put in special consideration with all the logistics with both projects and making sure that, you know, we're doing our best to be, I guess, not abusive of the roads and the neighbors and making sure that we confine our work to within our areas. Thank you.
Thanks for your consideration. Anyone else? Hands online?
No hands.
Okay, then we will now close the public comment portion of this item and move into a discussion. Yeah, the discussion and comments, I think just being a sketch plan, it's all going to kind of be the same thing.
Something that I'm looking at in the dialogue that was sent to us, we're to discuss the duplication. So I'm just looking at this and thinking that this project is its own enemy, because I know that Abby said it's not a duplicate building, but looking at some of the side profiles, when you see the two and the separation between them, it does look to me like a mirror image of the buildings. They may not be, but the perception is it's a duplication. And so if it seems to me that the project has created its own enemy. Otherwise, I mean, it's a massive structure next to a change of zone, but that to me is beyond my purview. I'm happy to hear that the Campbell Company is going to be respectful of the rules that we have in construction. Otherwise, I mean, it's another growth project that looks okay to me.
Yeah, thanks. Let's see where to begin. As far as the duplication, I think it's a problem. You have to look hard to find the differences. And if I have to look hard to find the differences and I'm an architect, then that says enough. So I believe that there's opportunities for changing up, you know, some of the geometries, reshuffling some of the materiality to give it some of that variation, that change in character. Because personally, I think that the palette of materials that's been selected is perfectly nice, is fitting, has a nice mountain modern characteristic set to it. I think it's appropriate for where it is. But I think it could be reapplied perhaps in a slightly different way with some slightly different geometries to give it that variability that's a little bit more apparent to, I'll just say, the average passerby. So that's an area that I think could use some work. I understand, to your point, that Ira, that the town created a situation that started out with a mirror condition by saying you got almost an alley look on both sides and you got to pull the cars in on both sides. So, you know, that was a challenge out of the gate, but I do believe that can be overcome, or let's just say improved.
Absolutely.
As far as the mansard roof comment, you know, when you look up the definition of a mansard roof, it isn't, but it's close enough in places. It's sort of a hybrid between a steep 12-12 pitch and a mansard roof and shed roofs. It sort of doesn't know exactly what it wants to be. And I want to applaud the effort for some of my commissioners here to stay out of the bulk plane, which we always try to encourage, but at what cost? Personally, my architectural sensibilities, I really don't care for mansard roofs at all. I think that they're a throwback, and they're really, I mean, the reason that they came about was a functional way to shed snow, yet create the absolute maximum amount of interior space and volume, which, as we know from a developer perspective, is part of the pro forma, which leads to the greatest amount of profitability from a given piece of land. Sorry, but I'm not really in favor of that roof shape for that purpose. So I think that there needs to be a reinvestigation of the roof forms all the way around. I think there's homogenization that's possible, some unification of forms, simplification, choose two things, and then make that work to solve many problems. Yeah, and like I said, I'm on board with materiality. So if you really get after those couple of things, which are not exactly small, it will solve most things for the greater.
Is it appropriate to ask a question back?
Sure, Abby, go.
Okay. As concerned with the mansard roof, so the initial intent was to help kind of bring that scale down of this building, and not use a like a flat parapet. But going back to that detail as far as a roof deck is concerned, are you more open to going back to that and seeing the flat roof rather than the quote unquote mansard roof situation that we have here?
Yeah, I mean, one of my fellow commissioners told me early on 2 years ago when I joined, we can't solve architectural problems for people in this meeting, but I would say that our code does have an exception in it of X number of cubic feet for a reason.
Sure.
And I think that is fair game when you're trying to solve certain challenges.
Yeah.
I personally don't have an objection to that over certain things that I see as a greater challenge.
Sure. Okay.
That's me personally, and I'm one vote. So
Sure. I'm trying in my head right now. I'm trying to figure out how I can meet Sherry and Megan and their concerns as far as making sure it adapts to the neighborhood and breaking down the scale while also not trying to create a larger, more massive building with the form. So so thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Donna?
Let's just say I was really surprised when I saw this, but I didn't look like your work, but you know, you're at the mercy of your client. When I saw the roof line, especially, I put mansard-ish. It was sort of like more alpine because it cut around the window. So it was like, okay, what, you know. I was surprised by your comment, Abby, when I asked you about, you know, coming off of Fifth Avenue, and you said because of the for like parking and garages because of the bike lane.
Yeah.
Which goes against the new Granite Galena Street bike lane street development because 15 driveways go through it. I think, you know, which was really kind of interesting that I was concerned on Granite that all these people are going to be backing up over the bike path. And so your comment that, oh, you know, you didn't go that route because you didn't want to go over the bike path, but you still are on Teller and the alley. So it was just kind of interesting. And in regards to the neighbors' concerns about the construction and equipment, Campbell does such an incredible job. Every time I would drive through the preserve going, oh my gosh, their construction site is spotless. And so I'm glad that they're going to be doing another project.
To answer your question about the crossing coming off of Fifth Avenue. That we intended on doing that. That was our initial design. The DRC, the agencies requested we didn't, and we stick to the existing curb cuts that are there, which are the two alleys. So it was my intent to come off Fifth to kind of vary the building and the access areas. But it was required of us through the different agencies to just come off the alleys.
Yep. And Donna, I can expand on that if you'd like. So yes, certainly staff as well as the DRC did reflect that comment. There's already an existing access for the Teller side. And I believe there's some accesses on the Frisco alley side as well. And we do want to concentrate those there. That also has the advantage of cars won't be backing out of driveways across the path into the street. They'll be backing into the alley or the unbuilt Teller Street right of way and then coming in at a right angle to Fifth Avenue. So that is a safer condition than just backing over the path.
But as I said, I thought that was really kind of interesting because on the master plan for the streets on Galena and Granite, everyone's gonna be backing out, but.
And again, there,
The existing condition on Granite and Galena, that's not the ideal condition. So what we are trying to do is moving forward, come up with a better plan rather than what we've always done. So.
Good idea.
And in fact, when we did the project on Second Avenue and just south of Granite,
Second and Teller.
we actually worked with them to move some of those driveways off of Second Avenue for that very reason.
Robert?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Fifth Avenue side of the building, and I gotta agree with a couple of the other comments. It really does feel duplicative, especially from that view. And I'm hopeful that you'll find a way to take some of what Patrick suggested and find some ways. I agree that the materials look good, and I also believe that I'm not an architect, so I could say that if I had to look at what a mansard roof looks like in our code and this, it looks like a mansard roof. So going back to what Iris said, looks like a duck.
Fair enough.
And finally, I don't like this building as well as some of your other ones. That may have to do with what your client wants. Again, I appreciate you looking at finding any ways that you can to make it not feel like a bulldozer is coming at these houses that are just south of you. So that if you can find a way to make that look a little less imposing straight in front of you, that would be great from my perspective. I'm appreciative that you're using Campbell Construction again. I have nothing but good to say for them. I only had one complaint from the whole thing that they had behind us, and they handled it promptly. So they keep a clean area, and I don't think the neighbors have a lot to worry about from what they have done right behind us. And I looked at it every single day for many months. That's all I have.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with what's been said. I do feel like there's a little too much duplication that's going on. I think, the good news is that in an attempt to solve that, I think you're going to make the neighbors happy, because I think that this is going to become a more attractive building, certainly along Fifth Avenue. I think we need to address, the entry elements and just kind of try and bring, maybe through some low roofs or something to kind of bring the scale down a little bit, at least along Fifth Avenue might help. But again, that's up to you to solve. But I do think that if we can deal with some of the duplication, that's going to help the architecture in general. I would say I did notice that some of your upper roofs are draining right onto the stairs to the roof decks, and just from a maintenance standpoint, you might want to keep an eye on that. I think some of those stairs are going to be tough to keep clean. And then the last comment I would have is just a preference, but it is in the code. Your renderings show a couple of spots, or at least one I'm looking at, where you've got a siding transition on an outside corner. Just keep an eye on that. Our code, and I agree that we should not be transitioning siding on outside corners.
Oh, no, God, no, no.
And so it shows up, it's sort of glaring in one of the renderings. And so just kind of keep an eye on that as you dial in these siding transitions and materials as you update the building. Other than that, I think you're on a great track. I think, I agree that it is a harsh transition, but that is what the current zoning allows. And unfortunately, it does seem to be, or fortunately, if you're the developer, it seems to be the way that these residential high lots are going. So I understand the density that's going on the lot, but I do think that it can be treated in a way that breaks it up a little bit more, brings the scale down a little bit more, at least visually, certainly along Fifth Avenue. But other than that, I like the palette as well. I think that functionally these are going to be a nice addition. I will sort of piggyback a little bit on something Patrick said. When I first opened up the set, it looked like the bulk plane lines were masking parts of the building because everything just cuts right at the bulk plane.
Sure.
And it is clearly designed by the bulk plane. Those roof forms are right to the bulk plane. And personally, I'd rather see a little bit of encroachment just to break that up because it seems too much designed by bulk plane on this one. And so if a shed roof needs to poke through to break up some of those mansard-ish roofs, I'd be more in favor of that and allowing those to poke through the bulk plane just a little bit. Again, the 350 cubic feet, you can do a lot with that. And I think it would really help some of your roof forms to explore not designing by bulk plane.
Okay.
You have my permission to play with that.
That's the other one that complains a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I would agree.
No, I think that we, I think the bones are there, and I think with some tweaking, you're going to get this thing right back on track. So I look forward to seeing it the next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any follow-up? Okay.
Can we take a break?
Sure. That's all we've got for you, Abby. We'll wrap that agenda item. And Robert, you want to take 5 before we start the next one? Okay. All right, then we will take a 5-minute recess. Right now it is 6:31 on this clock, so we'll resume at 6:36. Thanks.
Thank you.
They went on break. They're just off of it now.
Thank you. All right, we are back on and we are moving on to our third agenda item. Agenda item MAJ -22-003, a review of the sketch plan of the major site plan application for proposed new multifamily townhome project located at 212 Galena Street, lots 17, 18, and 19, block 7, Frisco Town Site, applicant Ed Inc. And Don will take us away.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Planning Commission. So this is an application for a 4-unit multifamily residential development. Stop me if you've heard this before. This is located at 212 Galena Street. It's currently the site of the proposal is to be 4 units in a single building. Each unit is going to be 3 bedrooms with a 2-car garage. So it's a relatively similar in a lot of ways to some previous applications that we've seen. 212 Galena is currently the location of a single family residence that was originally constructed in the 1880s. The staff report actually references the architectural inventory and from the Historic Resources Survey. I do have a copy of that if you're interested. It was not attached to the staff report as we had intended, but essentially it is not necessarily contributing or it's not eligible for the historic register. However, it is potentially locally significant. There's been alterations and modifications to it over the years. So while there is some historic value, the historic value is primarily due to the history of Frisco and who is the families that have lived there over the years. So it is set to be removed as part of this construction. And while it is a interesting structure, it's not necessarily a historic designated structure. Excuse me, the application as presented it is located in the central core zone district, which again allows 16 units per acre. The application does appear to be consistent with the community plan as it relates to principles as far as thriving economy and inclusive community. When we look at the zoning requirements, it does appear to meet most zoning requirements, specifically density, setbacks, lot coverage, and height. The application does propose tandem parking. 2 parking spaces will be in each unit in the garage areas, here and here, here and here with a tandem space in behind one of those. Facades. So again, we focus a lot on facade standards on these new multifamily developments and how whether it's going to be consistent with the development standards. In this particular case, there is some potential for some duplicative design, not necessarily on this property itself, but within properties in surrounding areas. It is similar in materials and scale to some newer buildings in the area. A lot of the building elements are used on the facade to break up that facade, which include balconies, covered decks, changes in roof planes, and as well as material and texture in order to break up that street facing facade and alley facing facade. The Planning Commission at the sketch plan could take the opportunity to comment on scale, design, proportions, site planning, landscaping, materials, and colors as shown in the application, as well as potential whether or not there's any duplication and duplicate building design for nearby buildings. Roof standards, again, we look a lot at these roofs. As noted in the prior application, there's a lot of consideration in maximizing volume, maximizing bulk, because that's where you maximize some of the desirability for future buyers. So as a result, we have to take a close look at these roof standards. In this case, the roof pitches are primarily between 3.5 to 12 and 9.5 to 12 pitches, with the majority at the 412 pitch. The area highlighted in red here is the primary areas that are 412 pitches. Again, the Planning Commission could have the opportunity to comment on the roof standards and whether or not those are being met with the application. Building materials and colors, again, very similar. We have a number of vertical metal corten siding, vertical wood siding, horizontal hardy board, and then metal railings and garage doors. You can see from the color palette that it does appear to meet generally our color and materials palette, and is compatible with those material standards. So finally, if the planning commission would like to provide some feedback to the applicant, certainly staff suggests that this proposed scale, design, proportions, site planning, landscape materials and colors would be opportunities to do so. Also the duplicate building design standard and whether or not the proposal is meeting the roof pitch standards. With that, I can answer any questions you may have on this. I do have the full set of plans available if you'd like to focus on any particular sheet as well.
Robert, do you have any questions for?
I should have asked this one last time, but under guiding principle 1 on the staff report, we continue to highlight 1.1C, strive to create an appropriate balance of full-time residents, second homes, and short-term rentals to maintain a diverse and vibrant community. We continue to highlight that one and say we're meeting that. But because we don't know whether these are going to be full-time residents, second homes, or short-term rentals, that's really an inappropriate thing to highlight because we don't know that we're actually doing that. We may be continuing to add short-term rentals on every one of these projects, and so how do we deal with that?
Sure, no, that's a great question. It's a bigger policy question than we can actually respond to on individual planning applications. Frankly, that's where a lot of maybe there's some discussions in certain settings of whether or not there should be caps on STRs, for example. Should there be inclusionary zoning? So if you are removing an existing residence, you have to put back a workforce housing unit. So there's a number of opportunities for that. Ultimately, that would be a policy discussion that the town council would have to direct staff to start developing and having that conversation. Whether to get to your original question of are we achieving that balance? Yeah, it is impossible to tell unless there's a deed restriction that says this unit shall be used for this unit may be used for that, whatever else. But we are, by creating additional housing opportunity and creating additional housing units, there is inherently an opportunity to continue to develop that diversity and balance.
My second question, thanks. And I understand it's a tough thing because you can't require people to tell you what we're building. And so we really struggle with that. My second thing is are we basically going to tear down every historic structure in this town over time? Because we have no way to stop the tear down of an 1880 building. I'm a member at St. John's in Breckenridge. We've just spent $3 million renovating that building and will occupy it for the first time on Sunday because the town of Breckenridge wouldn't let us do anything to the outside of that building. And it's an 1880s style building. So, you know, what is our longer term goal or plan with historic structures? I mean, this is a beautiful house and I hate the idea of losing it, but
yeah, no, I sympathize and agree with that sentiment. The way our historic overlay is drafted, it is a voluntary overlay only. So if there's no, as written, there is no teeth to it. It is a voluntary program where a property owner has the opportunity to gain advantages if they develop under that historic overlay. But absent the town purchasing or putting in stricter regulations on historic structures, it is a voluntary program only.
But theoretically, over a period of time, we're going to lose every historic building in town.
Theoretically, that is certainly a possibility unless there's something that's designated on the National Historic Register or something like that. And again, this structure is not eligible for that.
Why is it not eligible?
Just because, and I'll be happy to share this with you as well, but
I have that.
okay, the inventory in this particular case, there's additions as well as changes to the siding and a number of other changes that have happened over the years, going back to probably the 50s, where it really lost its the historic significance. That's the word.
Thank you. I'm done.
And that's my big thing about, you know, it's even
So we're
online,
not allowed to
that
comment.
might be the report.
Mhm.
It was done at the last inventory. There's been 3 inventories. And so the last inventory with that, the gal was hired from Aspen.
Susanna
to
Reed,
do it.
yeah.
On the website, on the town site, it's still the 2020 draft. They can't even finalize it.
Oh, thanks for pointing that out. Actually, I'll look at that because it has been completed. It has been finalized.
Every single
Yeah.
page.
Now we've got the wrong report up there, so it has been completed. It was completed a year ago. So we'll make sure we get that corrected.
But that's my biggest concern about this sketch plan. And, you know, so grateful that at least on the Excelsior mine, that the building was kept. It's in limbo, but it was kept. And at
Go
least
on.
on Fifth Avenue, those cabins, which was, I thought, the beginning of where the town was going to integrate the cabin into this beautiful, well-designed building was so cool. I mean, we can be proud of that. You know, is this house remarkable? No, but it's from 1880. Now, granted, the addition was put on, but the house itself, the original house itself should be eligible for something or other. But anyway, I was just kind of blown away with, oh my, goodness. But anyway, but I have no questions,
And if I may, I can comment. We've certainly explored what opportunities can we take some of these structures and relocate them. Unfortunately, we're running out of room for that as well. The Excelsior Horse hasn't found a home yet. We are continuing to work on that. The town was gifted a cabin from Bill's Ranch, the Mansfield cabin. That's currently in storage. It's dismantled and in storage until we can find a location for that. So unfortunately, unless buildings are preserved in place and reused and readapted in place, more often than not, they're going to be removed.
Just one. So you alluded to the similarity to potentially adjacent buildings. To which do you refer?
Not necessarily adjacent. I was more the
In the 300, what is it, the radius?
I don't know that there's a radius defined for the duplication.
300 feet.
Is it 300? Okay. In any event, there's nothing within 300 feet. The nearby buildings may be like 116 Galena as an example, where there's some similarities there.
Right across, yeah, the building I just referenced in the last.
Irene, questions?
I appreciate the discussion, but I don't think any questions at this time.
Okay. Don, so I think you already answered my one question. Do we have any plans to try and, as a town, do something with this house? Save it, preserve it, move it, use it? Are there any discussions? at all?
There haven't been to this point in time. A lot of times we will wait for the property owner to reach out to the town and say, is there an opportunity here? I think when the prior owner, Mr. Peterson, prior to him selling it, I think I had a conversation with him. However, that it just, nothing really came together. And again, we don't have a location to store it if we were to receive it.
Okay. That's the only question I had. Thanks, Don.
Mhm.
So at this point, we will turn it over to, is there an applicant to speak? Here we go. Please step to the podium and state your name.
Thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about our project. We're really excited about it, obviously.
Sorry, can you tell us?
I'm sorry, my name is Ed Enk. I live in Evergreen, but I have a residence here too. So we're part-time Friscoites and love it here. With regard to the historic, we did investigate trying to move it. Structural was kind of telling us it would be almost impossible to move. We even looked at moving the shed that's encroaching from the Kremel Myers next door to another location, because that one was kind of marked as historically significant, at least, more so than even the house. But we determined there's no foundation, there's nothing under it. If we even try to move it, it's just going to come down on us. We did work with the Kremel Myers who are next door as far as transition goes. And they've approved the project. We offered to build them and have a permit for a garage for them to replace the little shed that is actually partially on this property. They've been wonderful to work with, and we've been kind of doing the same thing, and I'm sure you all know John's story. Then with regard to the 412 roof, one nice thing is you cannot see it from the street. I mean, it is kind of in the middle of the project and intentionally back in there where we've got to get coverage, don't want to do a flat roof if we can avoid it. But at the same time, you just won't see it from the street, which will be nice. Duplicate design, is it 160 of 1166?
It's 116.
116. That's one of Abby's projects, and it's modeled off the cabins, which is the next door over, which is my project. And in fact, the cabins project, that one was the first cabins zoning project done in Frisco that my group did. Is it the only one to date still?
It's still the only one.
So we're certainly into exploring any options that you guys, push towards us and look at the zoning and try to take advantage of it, both to our advantage and to the county's advantage. Those are the big things: historic, transition, and the transition. We have Larry's townhomes right next to us, so anything is a bit of a transition down from that. And then the history of the other buildings adjacent to it. Across the street, Chuck, who was on the video, has a good complaint. He's in a residential high zone too, and those houses are now so expensive or worth so much that the only way to redo a project is to do some density, and that's going to be happening all along that street. His is big enough that maybe his will survive. We have a duplex that I did 20 years ago that's down the street that will fit into the whole thing. So we try to be compatible with the neighborhood. I've done another little bit more of a rendering if it comes across that I hate some of the colors in that one. Again, Pete Campbell's building it, so you've seen the materials that he uses and the quality, and will be not duplicating, but picking from his palette that he can get and do a really good job with. So I'm open to questions or the next step.
Robert, you have questions for the applicant?
I don't have any questions at this point.
Donna?
My question is that I didn't, and of course this is just sketch plan, but I would have been interested, unless I missed it, on an overview shot of where snow storage is, because the building's so massive.
It's direct. Well, the snow storage is always going to be adjacent to the driveway.
Excuse me, could you, yeah,
And it should show up, the snow storage is always adjacent to the driveway in our projects. And it should be on the landscape plan and presumably on the site plan. And actually, because there's decks on top of a portion of the driveway, the amount of exposed driveway is not excessive, as like half of what you see there. So there isn't a lot of exposed driveway to collect snow on.
I think that's really nice.
I mean, we follow the 8-foot minimum rule and the 300 square feet, 350 square feet rule, so
I think
it should be there.
I don't think I have any questions right now. Thank you.
Ira?
Same, no questions.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we will open it up to public comment. If there's anyone here in the room or online who would like to add to this discussion, raise your hand or step forward to the podium. Chuck, are you raising your hand? I think I see a hand in your screen. No? Okay,
And he's muted.
Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Chuck Drake, 215, letter A, Galena Street, directly across from the new project going to go in. We've seen the plans in detail, and it looks really well done. And I appreciate you guys talking about John Kremermeyer and the garage and the shed and so on. I hope you all sorted out that garage for John so he can pull into the garage straight ahead instead of a sideways deal. But that's between you and John and Claudia. Couple of questions for you. When the site is approved, and when is the potential start date, and roughly how long will we be lucky enough to hear all the fun noise?
Would you like to address that?
Scott will start construction as soon as we can get through the approval process, hopefully late spring. And we have to be pretty well complete and shell dried in and everything, by snow time. So you're going to be looking at the full summer. It's a 12-month project. There's no getting around it, but to be framed up and closed in and where the noise is inside instead of outside, you're probably looking at just before snow falls.
Thank you.
You had another question?
Chuck, does that answer your
I guess a
question?
follow-up to that question would be, we've had a lot of folks from the county buzz around on Galena Street and drawing lines, and we got colors from blue to pink to red. I'm just curious if there's a plan in place that's gonna put a sidewalk in or tear up the street, or, there's been a lot of activity here recently. It's not directly related to your project, but maybe it is.
Those are typically just utility markers showing where the telephone and electrical and gas are, and they're probably done just prior to anybody doing a survey on the street. We do have another project that's going to be redoing the alley on the other side of the street, 313 Galena, which the requirement of the DRC meeting was that developer completely do that alley and turn it into a fire truck sized street. So that is in the offering probably in the next month or so for you guys to look at. And you, Chuck.
Thanks. And Chuck, we did just do, I think it's approved now, the Complete Streets plan just went through. So there is an overall master plan for Galena now and the alleys. None of that is eminent as far as I know in terms of being implemented, but there is a master plan that you can see.
Was that
online.
approved by council?
And so if you have any questions about what the overall master plan for Galena Street, I would encourage you to take a look at that, which I would assume you can find online, Don. Yeah. Unless it's draft.
All righty, thank you.
Unless it's still a draft. Okay. Don,
Yes.
Chuck, do you have anything else?
No, not really. No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else online or in the room that would care to comment on this project? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public comment portion and we will move into comments and discussion.
Yeah, sorry, and I did have a kind of an afterthought question. And again, this is sketch plan. Are all four of these market rate, or would the owner consider one deed restricted?
They're all market rate. We didn't go for any bonus units in this project. And deed restricted just, will, in this size of a project, will totally kill your performance, just an FYI, because it's barely break even. You barely can cover your construction costs. And now with construction costs just going through the roof, I bet that's even worse.
Robert, do you want to start discussion comments?
I mean, I think it's in general, it seems like another big project, and we're in the core district, and we don't really have a lot of say on how big those buildings are. It does feel a bit duplicative to 116. I know that there's a lot in between there. I'm also beginning to get this feeling that every building on Galena and on the alley is going to have circular stairways going up to a rooftop deck, and that just I don't know. There's something about that doesn't, I don't think, is really mountain character as much. I wish there was a way in which we could move away from some of that and do something, more creative and less like we're going to make every deck have the funky stairway going up. I don't have any major things to say that I think need to get fixed on this. I'm appreciative of what you've done for the house next door to make.
It's even in the rendering there.
To make that a little less obtrusive. But it still feels big. You've done some good things on that side. It still feels big on the alley side and on Galena's side. Anything we can do to kind of make that less so, it would be beneficial. I think that's all I've got for right now.
Not that one.
That one was too mean. I hope that something can be done with the original Mumford House. I mean, the historic park was dismantled, a house in Bill's Ranch, and then have everything cataloged, and they're going to rebuild it someday in some place. If something like that could be done, and just because it is a shame. In regards to the building itself, I think it's too matchy-matchy. Let's take one design and move it and turn it. And I mean, it's too matchy-matchy. I think the building itself is too massive. It doesn't match anything in the neighborhood. Even the new construction, when the development next door, when Feldman came with this gigantic building, he at least listened to us and made 3-story, but individual townhomes to give more light. This is, no offense, but it's a barn. I mean, it's bulk plain design. It's a barn. And because the garage entrances are again on the alley and on Galena, there's 24.5 feet from the current addition to the Mumford House to Kreml Meyer. Okay. Today, when I was driving around, the Mumford House, which has about 20 some feet from Feldman's first townhome, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it was in total shadow. Kreml Meyer's house, you're proposing to be, I'm doing this from memory, 5 feet from the property line because code allows it, but it is taking away from the livability next door. The thing about the corkscrew, it's like, when it was first done, it was kind of unique. Now it's just cheesy, because it's like, hey, let's, I mean, it's just, it's overdone. And because of the so I was thinking is that, okay, with the garages and pulling in from the street and the alley, okay, but there's other buildings that have really done, and I'm going even back to the one on 5th and Galena, where you're entering from the alley and there's space between buildings. And if, for instance, I don't know how this, totally works. I didn't really look at the plans, but to help give space between this development and Kreml Myers Historic Cabin, to be able to have a driveway that you could come in and park from the east into the 4 townhomes. I mean, it's totally different, but it could lessen the impact on Criminal Myers House. I would ask for, with this design, to do a year-long shadow study, like the first of every month, at 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Because I'm just really concerned after I drove by, today at 3 o'clock, and the Mumford house, which is further away, was in total shadow at 3 o'clock. I mean, it's bright sun every place else. So I'm just a little concerned about the mass. And in regards to the roof line, and the roof lines and stuff, on Galena, it's a little Disneyland. There's a lot going on to me. It's just, if I was living across the street or something, there's a lot going on. It's trying to be different, but it's just matchy and let's change this a little bit. It doesn't hold together very well. And, if it could be too small, 2 smaller buildings, just to have some scale, it would be more palatable to me. The colors and the color and the material mix is okay, it's pretty nice.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, I'm just gonna sort of work from mass backwards. So the mass, I agree with Donna. It's packed into the bulk plane pretty tightly. That seems to be the defining limits of its shape characteristics. I think, the use of the 412 roof isn't totally offensive to me because it is set back in there. But the defining mass still is really the bulk plane itself. So I would relook at that. In terms of the detailing, yeah, there's a little bit of a lot of different things. I mean, do you really need the barn bracing and the other things that, some of the extra detail characteristics? Because I think they're taking away, they're not adding to. It's just a few too many moves for me personally. Let's see. The biggest one for me really is just, the project has effectively 2/4, or well, really it's like 2/8 designed, and then it's repeated. So when you look at the east and the west elevations, both of those are exactly the same. And when you look at either the east or the west, they're 100% mirrored over their center line. There is no effort whatsoever to match our code provision of any definition change in plane, materiality, or architectural relief. So I think that those most definitely need to be addressed, specifically the eastern face, if nothing else, but really both of them by code. And then the north and the south facades are, again, identical. They're just rotated around the building. And they both have different purposes and different proximities to different types of usages and frontages. So, I mean, I think that those are both opportunities just to be explored anyway, and come back with a logical reason if not. But I think it's an opportunity to be investigated. Materiality is an important one, and I think I definitely wanted to point this out to my fellow commissioners because nobody's mentioned it yet. When I first was scrolling through this deck and I saw the slides, I was not in favor of the renderings at all. The color palette there kind of threw me. But then when I saw the last slide on the deck, I'm very much in favor of materials that are presented in their real characteristics. So I would encourage, when you come back to this the next time, please do your best to show the renderings illustrative of the actual materials, because I think that helps your case quite a bit, actually. They're definitely more attractive oranges and greens and some.
Can you help me pull
light grays.
that one up, the PDF that we loaded? I clicked on it. Nothing. Yeah, I
You
have
made
a
it go away?
grader. I felt the same thing, so
Yeah, yeah.
it just doesn't, oh,
Which slide?
oh, I'm sorry, go all, I guess it's. Sorry, it did pop. Can we
You can zoom in on one of the.
zoom in on, oops. Yeah, sure I can.
If you go to the top.
I got it.
There you go.
Part of the not matching the ones up the street was to give it kind of the green trim. But then go with the materials that we talked about and showed on that last page, tried to match them up without doing a realistic rendering, which we can do for you guys, but this is just good old Revit, basic model with not even realistic, with just shaded colors. But it does give you a better feel for, what the materiality of the building is. And the stone corners and in fact, there was sort of some intent to do the stone corners to be part of an older building, quote unquote, with the windows with mullions and the rest of the building being a little bit more modern and having no mullions. So there was some thought to it. And then I can see your comment on the east and west side that could be probably pretty easily worked. I mean, they do step in and out, maybe 18 inches. And sort of are trying to create some towers there, but
But they're the same.
but they
If you
are
go
the
down to
same.
center
They are
line,
the same.
you
They
look
are the same.
just like a book.
They are the same. Is the code say mirrored on all sides or any sides, or is it street sides?
The last project we just looked at was
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, no, I
Just a
get
little
ya.
bit of There in the middle.
Yeah.
I think we're splitting hairs literally, if we're talking about, are they joined or or
Right,
separated?
no, I get it. Okay. That's not a hard one to deal with, but
Again, yeah, I mean, I think you can work through it.
okay,
Just some constructive criticism there.
yeah, great.
I do agree with Donna, but I realize that zoning is zoning at this moment in time and, what it is. I would be interested to see the shadow study too.
And that we can do, thanks to Revit.
Ira?
Thank you for coming. What we don't comment on, and I think that is what's coming to the outside, the interior are mirror image floor plans. That's not a comment. But that reality comes through on the outside. Since the floor plans are the same, mirror images, it really portrays itself in the elevations. So even though like looking at east and west are like the most egregious of this, even though they're articulated front to back, when you look at them, I mean, the window placements.
No matter what you do,
No matter what you do, you've got these windows that are one here, two here, two here.
Yep.
You see this? This is symmetry.
no, I'm not gonna argue with the east, the north and, or the
Right. But I
east and
do-
west
there is
sides without
one little-
question.
Am I missing a railing on the east elevation?
Possibly.
on the top?
Quite possibly.
I said it was a Revit.
Or is that where the planning commission is gonna exit?
Computer.
We were,
So, so that, without, beating a dead horse, I kind of see that the reality of the identical floor plans
mhm.
unfortunately portrays in all the elevations. The front and back, I mean, when I looked at it in 2 dimensions, it just looks overly busy. I mean, the sides looked a bit boring, barn-like, and the front looks like, wow, what else can you throw in here? So, beyond, so that's really my main thrust. The color palette, the materiality looks nice. The massiveness, I think, is a function of code. Do what you can do. And I would just like to see the absolute mirror imaging kind of disappear somehow.
We can actually do that because eliminated some of the high balconies on the Kremlmeyer side just for them. But we can kind of switch things around a little bit. So the floor plans actually aren't identical, but they still come through that way. So I get where you're coming from. That we can deal with.
That's it.
My only other comment is that, and we're beyond questions, but I'll just make this as a comment, is that I hope that you consider putting some solar on this building. The town is encouraging solar. And I didn't see anything about it in here. But you've got, if you're gonna be up 45 feet, you might as well make some use of solar and help the town's energy goals.
I know that Campbell Construction has come back and done solar on the cabin project. I noticed that. So, which is just up the street. So I'm sure it can be a consideration. Our roofs kind of are going the wrong way, but
We'll see.
So, yeah, I feel pretty similar. Again, I think that some work on eliminating some of the mirrored aspects of the buildings would really help out. I appreciate the new renderings. I do like those a lot better than the orange we're seeing in some of those earlier renderings. One thing that I don't know that there's necessarily a code that I can reference, but since this is sketch plan, I get to say it. The block wide deck that faces each street,
got it,
to me is a bit much and kind of boring. And I would love to see that broken up a little bit. You mentioned the towers, these nice stone towers that you've created on the corners. If somehow the deck were to allow those towers to express themselves a little bit more, I think I would like it better from the street. I just feel like that really long
have
horizontal.
a porch cover there rather than a continuous deck.
Yeah, I just think that long continuous line of the deck is just not something that would look great from the street. So if there's anything you can do to break that up, I think that would really help out the street elevations. And again, I feel like you've already received some instruction on the lengthwise elevations. So just look forward to seeing those at the next hearing. The only other one for me is the railings at the top that are the rooftop decks that are like 3 square windows. I see what you're trying to do there, but I think maybe, going with more of an open rail in those areas might help the illusion of mass just a little bit to bring some of those walls down. I don't know that that's a detail. And I think that was used on one of the other projects too, that we've been talking about, it being a little too similar. So maybe that's one of the details that people are picking up on. And maybe you could look at doing something a little bit different for those more solid rails on the roof deck. But other than that, yeah, barring zoning code changes, this is what goes on that site. Appreciate you working with JK and whatever you can do for him and his garage and keeping some sun on his lot. I think we would all appreciate it as much as.
Well, to Chuck's point, we weren't allowed to put a driveway straight into his garage like he had wanted to. And the other thing Denver has solved is letting a doghouse go through the height restrictions. Just for your getting to your roof deck, because everybody's got to have them.
Right.
But you can't put them in and get a third story in these projects. But in Denver, we're going through the maximum height with just a doghouse. You can have a little mechanical space and a landing, and that's it on the top going through just for future consideration.
That's something I think we will probably talk about as we move forward. I know we're looking at ways to increase the ability to build deed restricted and more affordable housing, and some of those height limits are restrictive if you want to get that third floor in, for sure, especially if you want
bonus unit in.
Great. Does anybody have anything else to add?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bet. And so with that, I don't have an official agenda. I just have these in front of me. We're moving on to a work session now, right?
It's a work session. As a follow-up from MAJ 21-008, which is Slopeside Hall project that you saw lasted on March 3rd. So this is a presentation and discussion of the landscape design for the plaza area located between the new Slopeside Hall and the Day Lodge. I can just dive right into it if you like.
Yeah, go for it.
And I've talked a lot, so I'm gonna mostly just turn it over to Megan Teston with Norris Design, who's here to present this on behalf of the town of Frisco. Essentially, because this would be a minor site plan, it's administrative site plan approval. But the planning commission did express some interest in how that plaza design would look moving forward. So as a result of that, the town has asked that we go ahead and present that at a work session this evening.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, all. Thank you very much, commissioners, for your time. I'm Megan Teston with Norris Design, and I actually am here representing the town of Frisco with the Slopeside Hall Plaza concept. I really hope to keep this a discussion. I know I stood up here as part of the building approval, and we really were not at the time running the plaza simultaneously. So we're kind of playing catch up now, but it's important to be here and talking with you about that because it's, to me, it's really exciting. It's kind of the synergy of that whole space. So I will get into that. Okay. So just a little background. I think a lot of you have seen this, so I'll go fast, but essentially we first started looking at the study and what this building would bring to the PRA and how it would work with the existing Day Lodge and the existing Nordic Center. So this is just an overview, and we looked at this site and how it all fits together. You can see the giant blue area we identified right away as really important. So I'm here today to talk about that. And it's important in the summer and the winter. That's something we looked at a lot in the design. And I'm going to move on to the illustrative site plan now, which is really, it's really exciting to me. We worked really closely with staff on a number of concepts to kind of go back and forth as to how much green space we wanted to add, how flexible we wanted the space to be. And ultimately, flexibility was something that became really important to us. We actually played a lot with the height of the proposed slopeside hall in order to create a really nice ADA universally accessible area between the two buildings. So the way it is now, we really don't have much grade change at all here. There's only, I think, 2 feet of grade change over about 100 feet. So we're looking at a really nice level area, which is awesome to play with. You'll see here, we really kind of centered the whole design around the idea of connecting not only the two buildings, but out and into the existing lawn area and bringing views back towards Buffalo this way, as well as views towards Peak One and the 10-mile range in this direction. What we have kind of anchoring that transition is a raised stage area. And when I say raised, it's just raised a few feet. And that would be a different materiality. And that's kind of the eye of this, if you'd have that comment for it. And along with it would be a trellis so that we have some type of architectural feature in that site. In terms of scale and proportion, to give you guys an idea, between this corner of the building and this corner of the existing Day Lodge is just a little over 80 feet. And the plaza itself, if you go from the stage out towards kind of where the existing bollards are here, that's about just under 150 feet. So we're looking at a nice, large, flexible area. We are proposing to keep and to integrate a lot of the existing plaza area with the new area. So the planting areas that you see here are primarily existing. And the scoring pattern that's going on at the existing Day Lodge will be carried through to the plaza until we hit these kind of radial bends with the different concrete patterns. Also, kind of looking at the stage area, the other thing we thought would be really interesting about it is the idea that it can be viewed from both directions, right? So you could have a large venue, you could spill out onto the lawn area and have, you know, a number of people going up that hillside, have you, if you ever would care to, for a larger event. But you could also flip it and have something much more intimate on the concrete area. The other thing I kind of want to point out is we also studied this for flexibility in terms of different events that the town currently holds there. We looked at the sort of 12 by 12 tent sizes and how those might fit in an event, as well as possibly one larger outdoor tent should you put up something for a big venue And we really were able to keep a nice area here that you'll see that's kind of open for that flexibility. Along with that, though, we did want to try to introduce and soften landscape as much as possible. We have landscaping around the stage. We have kind of these boulder seating areas out into the lawn area. A lot of the trees around this side of the proposed slope side hall. And then working with the town and with Public Works to provide trees in more of a movable planter form so that we can be conscious of snow maintenance and removal in the winter, but still have trees in the summer, or should they choose to leave them there year round, they would be there year round as well. I think that's kind of the overview of this image. And I'm going to go to the next page where we just have a couple of these. Oh, I forgot one really important thing. Let me back up. Is you're coming to this plaza and we're really looking at this from a pedestrian experience. This crosswalk here is oftentimes, I would say, particular for first-time drivers or first-time visitors. It sneaks up on them. They don't see it. They don't notice it. We want to do something about that. We looked at possibly putting something actually over the road and decided to back off and look more just at lighting and decorative elements. Similar to the light posts that we have on Main Street, that was something that was incorporated into the master plan at the PRA. So bringing that from the master plan actually into fruition in this area. So having them kind of replace and complement the existing lights out there from this side of the street on over to this side of the street. So that's kind of the entrance sequence that we're trying to create for pedestrians and strengthen this connection across the road here. And I also, we worked a lot with making sure that we're flexible with these planting areas and inviting people into them by adding stepping stones through them, adding some benches, adding places for public art within them. They're actually really kind of cool areas, but right now it sort of feels like, hey, don't go in there. That's plants, just stay on the edge of it. So we want to change that. We want to make that part of the plaza. We want to be able to incorporate seating in those areas and also leave a location for public art. What that will be, I think we'll leave more to the art committee that's being formed. Although I do have my own personal ideas, but it's not what I'm here to talk about. And then, yeah, just a few details of what this trellis might look like around the stage in terms of materials. Again, we work closely with Public Works and with the town staff to make sure that concrete that we're proposing will be easy to repair should it get broken. So we're sticking primarily with gray or natural kind of concrete rather than getting into a lot of colors. But then for accent materials, we'd like to do wood or Trex as well as steel and corten wherever we can in some of these accent features. And then natural boulders and xeric plantings. It's kind of our palette. That is my presentation, and I'll open it up because I really want this to be more of a conversation.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Just start, Robert.
Going back to the illustrate.
Yeah.
The pictures on the left side, like number five is not illustrative of what you're really going to have. It's only supposed to show the
stage
itself.
Yeah,
we're
no,
not
that's
having-
how we get into concept imagery can get a little tricky. So yes, please take these all with a grain of salt.
Well, the same thing with number 4. Where is the gravel going to go?
No gravel.
Oh, okay.
It's really just looking at how you leave the plaza area and enter the lawn area. We want to make sure we like do a really nice detail in that transition because we will have one ADA route onto the lawn, but there is some grade change here at the Day Lodge, and there will be some on portions of this lawn
And if we
transition.
and I appreciate you're talking about the crosswalk.
Yeah.
But given the speed at which cars go down that road, have we given thought to doing some other things, either some speed bumps in there or using kind of the newer technology where someone can push a walk button and it lights up signs that say stop? I mean,
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about.
I think some kid's gonna get hit.
Yeah, I mean, the 4th Street stop sign, it's wood and very of our place, but it has the blinking perimeter. We actually just put one in the reserve because we had speeders, but you can't put in speed bumps because plows hit them. So what do you do? But if it's something that catches your eye in a little better way,
Yeah, I love that idea. That's intersection.
It's a day and a night thing because they're pretty darn bright as LEDs.
Okay.
And then maybe there's a summertime planter in the middle of the road that looks like an object that I might have.
Oh,
to
I
pay
love that.
attention to. So it sort of says, there's a blinking thing on the side, and then there's an object in the middle. I should pay attention.
Well, and they make this, I mean, and we've seen them in more and more places where if you push the walk button, you know, like, just like you were going across another street, it actually puts a red light up to say stop, so that it's really clear that, you know, because I think, you know, what we're talking about is having more kids in here.
Yeah.
And I think we're just asking for trouble otherwise.
So I'm gonna go way out on a limb here. Because it's a work session.
Go for it.
And this is something that's probably near and dear to my heart because I'm just a water.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, I look at this design, and first of all, I want to highly compliment you. This is awesome. This is really fantastic. Perfect way to tie these things together. Everything we do, right down to like grassy uses. There's hardscape. There's low. Good greenery. You're thinking about benches. There's shade bits. That's all awesome. The paving pattern, beautiful. Love it. Maybe I should ask a preface question. Where are you in the budgetary consideration of this process?
That's actually one of the reasons why we're kind of moving forward with this now. This will be bid out with the building so that we have hard pricing on it and know what the cost is, with cost being so much in flux right now. We're just going to bid it with that. And so that we'll have an idea of that. Is that okay? Thanks. Just wanted to make sure.
Suitable to put like an adult
Yeah.
on it. All right. All that being said, that's the technical jargon. I have wanted forever in this town, going back to more kids and getting more functional use out of this place and this space, and looking at all this hardscape. Some sort of a water feature somewhere in Frisco, something for kids to funk around in. I would love with my 13 or 12-year-old, or actually it's even awesome for 7 or 8-year-olds, to lay in the grass and just chill out there and have a place where I can see my kid and know it's safe. I'm just thinking about like in
Yeah.
Chicago, Minneapolis, New York.
Even
And those
bolder.
are big cities,
Yeah.
but they have them in millions of small cities, just little splash parks. And it does not have to detract from your design.
Yeah.
It could just be little pop fountains, like at the joints in your dark pavers, where there's just little pop jets that just shoot water up. And the maintenance on it is surprisingly low. I've done it in other places. You know, it's like your sprinkler system, but just on a little larger
Mhm.
scale. It gets blown out in the wintertime with air.
Union Station has that.
Yeah, I mean, they just
Yeah.
winterize it. Exactly.
It has it.
They certainly do. You are right. So it's absolutely doable in our climate.
Yeah.
But it would just be a super interesting way to use this large expansive paving
I love
in,
that
in
idea.
an additional functional, creative way that contributes to families. And it's like our sledding hill, right? Sledding hill is sort of word of mouth thing. It's not highly advertised, but
Mhm.
yet everybody and their sister goes and buys those garbagey sleds, which I hate for trash reasons, but from Walmart and everywhere else, and they end up there when they're here as tourists. They would do the same thing.
Mhm.
And if I could sell F&B or whatever at the day lodge, but it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, I think that's a really fun idea, actually.
Maybe just throw it in the hopper and
Uh-huh.
see if it gets any traction.
And I'm sure that's something that we'll have to make sure we, obviously with council being kind of the controller of this, we'll have to run it past them and make sure from a sustainability standpoint, people are
It's a research system.
exactly.
It's not, you could even, I mean, that gets a little more eccentric, but you could figure out how to take it off gray water. Gray water filtration system, that adds to expense.
Yeah.
You could take it off the day lodge and the slopeside hall.
I'm just writing some things down. Thank you.
I got a couple comments. The boulder seating is great. I mean, it's just nice. Because it's there, but it's not there, you know? In regards to these little, I just wrote down park pods, you know, these round areas where you say future location for public.
Oh, yeah.
art and that sort of stuff. Okay. And these benches and trees.
Those are there, just so you know.
I'm sorry?
Those are existing.
Oh, those are existing? Okay, because if you're
Keeping
putting
them.
benches in there to say, come on in here,
Mhm.
I was just concerned about lighting,
Hmm.
you know, for safety.
Oh, good idea. And
Just, you know, just to keep it safe. You know, someone goes in there, you know, what if a kid runs in there and then the parents, you know, but.
not to mention lighting, we are proposing, and we're picking out the final fixtures, but we're proposing solar lighting for the rest of the plaza so that we're getting away from hardscape. And we have a couple of prototypes we're working with the town on, but there will be solar lighting in the plaza.
And then with the lawn area, I assume will be manicured, cut lawn by the town. The native grass area is native seed. Is that just gonna be native seed and not cut?
That's the hopes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Megan, I'm curious, you know, I've walked around the Day Lodge a lot, and I can picture how much paving is already out there. And then I'm looking at this and I'm picturing how much is about to get added. I mean, this is a lot of concrete we're
Yeah.
talking about. And the new slopeside hall is really landlocked in a lot of concrete. We've got these really nice landscape pods around the Day Lodge. Did you think about trying to find any more landscaping opportunities to kind of soften the slope style hall a little bit? Because right now it just feels like it's wrapped in
Sure.
concrete.
That's actually that's a great point. And I think we could do a little more to try to find those. This is fluid, and that's why we're here. I like the idea of adding in more landscape. We definitely, you know, again, worked a lot with staff and with Public Works about the seasonality
Right.
and plowing and how those are
Tents.
treated. And
Obviously, there
yeah,
needs to be a
and
dedicated spot for those big tents, because I'm sure that's going to happen. But if some other landscaping, and maybe it's movable, maybe it's.
I love
dedicated,
that.
but,
Yeah.
It just feels really stark over there by the new building in this. But yeah, otherwise, it's
Okay.
beautiful. I can't wait. The boulders, the picture you showed us of the boulder
Yeah.
seating area actually shows grade change at each of those. We're not proposing to actually select the terrain there.
Sorry, I couldn't quite find the right character image. We're proposing boulders like that
Right.
in kind of that pattern, but no grade change other than what's there naturally. There is grade change on this lawn currently, and we are working with a civil engineer to try to keep it around 3 or 4%. Once you get past 4%, you really feel it as a user. But as we all know, this is a hillside. So once you get kind of beyond this rock perimeter, we are going to start to climb with that grade.
Well, and I think we want some of that because we also want this field to be used. I mean, I know right now it's used a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
You know, it's the start of the trail running series, and you know, so trying to keep it not so dedicated. That I'm glad to hear that there are not actual grade changes in there, and hopefully the boulders will be placed in a way where that portion of the field doesn't feel like other.
I
the
hope
rest of
so.
the
Yeah.
town. Yeah. Other than that, it's looking
Idea of adding, maybe we can work with to add more movable planters on this side as well.
and to soften that slope style
Mhm.
hall from that side. It just feels like we've got all this.
Yeah, we've
landscaping
got-
on the Day Lodge
yeah.
side, and then it's really kind of
And we've got view lines we got to be cognitive of, but the thing about putting the trees and the movable planters are, those are not the tree species that are going to be blocking the view 50 years from now. So
No, I appreciate that.
Robert, would you think? Are you thinking that the large tent space would be on the plaza area itself?
it could be. We're just trying to be flexible
So
for
are you
how
think-
people might use this.
Would you think about putting in recessed anchors for the tent so that we wouldn't be doing weird things way out? I mean, I think this is the moment in which to put in recessed things that you could go grab and predefine how big your tents could be
Mhm.
ahead of time.
yeah, that's actually one of the details we're working on right now is how to incorporate that. We're also going to make sure we have power for different events. And this is an ad alternate on value engineering, but we're hoping the trellis will be lit as well. So
That could potentially be done solar, couldn't it?
probably yeah, that there is a potential. I didn't get that far yet. I do know the lights can be solar and we're comfortable with that.
Very nice design.
Uh-huh.
The concrete, is that all on grade on one level? Yes. So Patrick was encouraging kids. The only thing I'm hesitant about, I don't want to encourage skateboarders.
Good point.
I was just at one of our shopping centers. There's skateboarders going up and down in front of every store. It's crazy. So I would be careful of that. So if speed bumps for them doesn't work. And then on that crossing from the Nordic Center across, maybe not the prettiest, but certainly cost effective, so we can do something else. You know that red concrete, like on the bike path by the dam or?
Yeah,
I think that's real visual.
I like that idea too, yeah.
And I would say out of my cheap bucket.
Is this actually just scored concrete or is it pavers on a sand
This is
bed?
scored concrete with mostly just texture being the differentiator.
Gonna do stamped?
I'd like to do a texture stamp rather than like an actual stone stamp so that we get texture, and then we'll play with a light broom finish as well.
Fountains.
I love it.
I had I know that I'm not on the commission, but I had a concern that I think was kind of danced around, but not necessarily touched upon. And I think for the condition that we are, the intended use of this being a summertime use, I think the water element is a really creative way to get around it. But with how much concrete there is and how much sun exposure occurs in the summertime here, I'm just thinking of how hot, like genuinely hot that area is going to be without something like a water element or maybe some more landscape breakage there. That's genuinely going to be a very warm area. And I think, the shade of tents for any kind of event will help that. I also think something like a water element could help to bring people in, because naturally I think with something that hardscaped, that it's going to push people to the edges of it, and it's going to end up being a mostly vacant space in the summertime during daytime uses.
Well, if you can't do Patrick's thing, you could do a mister above it. Yeah, they do work well. They work well on Larimer Square, even in Denver. I think that would be it.
Skateboarders will love it.
For 2 hours.
Awesome. Anything else? I think it
Everything
looks awesome,
Okay,
Megan. Thanks so
great.
much for coming in and taking the time to come fill us
Thank you
in.
for your time. I know it's late, so.
No, we really appreciate it. We're getting to see it.
And I just want to kind of leave with that actually these comments are great. And we did really, I know this space is going to continue to evolve and people are going to continue to add on it. So we're just trying to be as cognitive right now as to how can we give people the best canvas to use it in all sorts of different venues. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Mhm.
So that was our last official agenda item. Yes.
How to actually.
Now it's grill the staff.
Gang up on.
Yeah.
Commissioner comments, great.
Staff, I have a list.
I have a question too.
Okay, fire away.
Is the planning committee, one of the said, oh yeah, I'm on the planning committee. It's you, Dan Fallon, Andy Held, Mark Sabatini, and I can't remember who else.
So no, this is what, at the last town council meeting, council members said, you know what? We would like to create a more flexible way for developers of workforce housing developers to propose ideas that may not be entirely consistent with the code. Or not necessarily, they might could be fully compliant with the code, but may want to be looking to the town for some financial assistance in such a plan. I think there's maybe a perception that that the only way for that to happen is if council members are intimately involved in that process. So we do have 2 council members, actually 1 outgoing council member and 1 current council member that have volunteered to meet with developers, workforce housing developers, to discuss potential projects along with staff.
So Dan, it's my understanding that Dan said that he's gonna stay on it even if he's not which is great. So it's these 4, but I was told there were 2 others.
I mean, it's myself, Diane McBride,
Okay.
who's, and then Jeff Goebel, if need be, other staff, if need be. The first one we had, who's actually Jeff Goebel sat in because it was a request about a right-of-way
I
vacation.
just want to make sure there's 1 woman on it. 'Cause I just got a list of guys. So you said Diane McBride. That's my buddy.
Good Lord, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Foot is breaking ground the first week of April, right?
Really? Is that a real thing?
Here it is. That's what we're laughing at.
2019. First week of April 2019 is when we started.
No, so what's going on? Because I know that.
Building permit, it is in review. We got the energy modeling, which was the last outstanding thing we were waiting for. They are refining some of their dewatering. They're gonna have like 13 wells drilled to dewater the site because they're going to build their garage. Yeah. They're estimating 8,000 gallons a day, or I'm sorry, 8,000 gallons a minute is what they'll be pulling out of there during construction. And I don't, no, not that deep, but it's like 16 feet. Yeah, they're going down. Their plan is to have the hole open for about 2 months, just doing all the over excavation that they need to be doing.
This will look a lot like, this will look a lot like the marina when it was, when they were working on the no, just this past year when they
New
were
building, new office.
the lift station and pumping water out forever.
It's gonna be much more water. 8,000 gallons a minute is a lot of water.
So what changes have they made since we saw it last?
So when did you last see it?
I've been on
Before
this-
I was here?
I've been on this for 2 years and I've never seen it.
Before I was here.
They were not happy.
So the significant change that's been made was in the summer of 2020, we processed an administrative site plan. No, that's
With the employee
not
housing
even true.
off-site.
Yeah, the employee housing was moved offsite. I think that was before that, though.
We didn't see that.
I don't Yeah, I don't know that you needed to because we determined that it was a.
So nothing else material has changed that we need to see again.
No, I mean, there's correct. Nothing else material has changed that you have to see. I mean, there's obviously changes to finishings, there's changes to whatever else because they've got a new architect since the last time you've seen it. They've got a new contractor, PCL is there. Marriott.
It is a Marriott. Marriott main brand or off brand?
No, signature.
The JW.
So what's happening then with the Feldman lot, Fox, Trot lot, Denby lot? Because I was having coffee at Abby's. And there was a whole group of Foot, Kelly and his wife and Gary Youngie and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. You know, they were having this big meeting and stuff. And so Kelly said, deal? And he said, no, not if blah, blah. I mean, because I was literally like here and I said, you know, I'm like, da, 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 da. So I was just kind of wondering what was going on.
Have no applications for that.
No, and the only reason I thought that something like that would have been on this planning committee because it was, you know.
We have no information
and no way to get him to take down the illegal building.
There's a stop work order on that. There's an open citation on that. As soon as one of our officers finds Mr. Feldman, he will receive that citation.
And
He gets fined. Does it cost him some money?
Post funds, yes.
and Myra's, brown fencing came down on, Rainbow Court, so something must be
Well, the wind. No, literally, the windstorm the
yeah.
other day blew it down. Yeah,
Oh, you're.
yeah,
kidding.
no, absolutely.
We don't yet know. So
No, so I saw- I-
she's
I
not
was like,
gonna,
oh, maybe
we don't
it's
know
not, you know.
when she's gonna start building yet.
No, they've got an application for a building permit in. They had to change their foundation due to due to encroachment. Thank you. Bulk, it was not a bulk plan encroachment. Well, I guess technically it was. However, yeah. But they do have a building permit in. We are looking at that building permit. We'll probably issue it as a foundation only. However, we're still missing some items on that before we can do that. There's some shoring walls and some other things that are necessary.
One other question, and I know this really isn't planning commission, but we talk about it a lot in the master plan. Are we ever gonna start enforcing Main Street parking like limits?
Funny you should ask. Actually, on the April 12th commission meeting, that's actually a proposal. It's for paid parking at the marina as well as enforcement on Main Street. We initially started enforcing parking limits on Main Street back in 2019 before I was here. That went away when we lost our CSOs because we can't keep CSOs on staff, and that's who does that parking enforcement. So now we're actually looking at doing a private company to do that.
You're a slip over.
No.
Double. I tried.
I know.
You'll have to talk to the marina people. I have nothing to do with that.
I'll keep
I
taking
have
my,
stayed far
I got
away
one
from
for
that.
you. I ended up in a conversation with somebody recently, log cabin.
Mhm.
About yeah, they're actively. But I swear. that they're not. Oh, and I swear.
Guess what? You'll see it in 2 weeks
Alrighty then.
and sketch plan.
Fair enough.
What's going on with Johnson's project down on Highway 9 in Granite? the two
Yeah, we
restaurants?
sent that out for agency reviews back in December when he submitted the full site plan because he had that 6 months from time of sketch plan approval. Got agency comments back from Excel that transformers and some other clearances are not being met, so he's working to resolve some of those issues.
which
So it's
one's,
still moving forward.
which one's
On
that?
the corner of Granite and Highway 9, right?
And we approved that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we preliminarily.
We approved sketch, or we did sketch plan, but we haven't seen it in final. Okay.
Yeah.
I was
But it's
thinking,
still moving.
I was thinking we had
It's still
approved it.
moving. We haven't received any new submittals from him.
Sorry, Don.
Another one?
No, we just.
You have a list.
No, I did.
What's going on with the town hall dumpster? You guys ever gonna fix that dumpster?
I don't know. If our lazy architect. would get-
Is that you?
I don't know if I can call myself a dumpster enclosure. Yeah, I have to step down if we're gonna talk about that.
And are we going to see a next close your ears. Are we gonna see a next version of the building next to the childcare center?
80 West Main.
Oh, 80 West Main.
Yes.
Yes. I'm assuming, they have got, we heard that, in February, if I recall correctly, so they've got till August to submit under the code. One last thing, so we've got applications for planning commissioners. They're out till April 15th is the deadline. I believe we have a couple of actual applications out of the 4 seats that are expiring. So if you are interested in continuing, please get your application to Cheryl over there. If you're not interested, if you're not continuing, you have to recruit your replacement. That's a rule that we've imposed. So, yes.
Have we gotten?
Retiring?
Nobody's.
Nobody's
retiring. There's 4 seats up.
You're officially stepping down.
No, I haven't decided.
I have to reapply.
You have to reapply. So it's 3 of you and then Lena. Okay.
Have we gotten outside applications?
Not as of yet.
Yeah, we're, Cheryl and our communications team has put some effort getting it out there.
They have put
I've seen it too.
People are seeing all these 8 o'clock meetings. They're like, what the heck?
Gone
I
are
was
the
told
days
I-
of 1 hour meetings.
Yeah.
Food, so
Popcorn and
sushi and sodas.
Oh, I did want to say thank you to whoever made the decision to make a change at the marina for increasing our benefit there.
Oh, do we get a different benefit?
That was our HR department. We were looking through that. I don't know what the change was, so.
What?
They cut the, rather than
Slip
what,
rates are down.
10% or 15%, it's a 50% reduction in slip
Wow,
fees.
Nice.
that's healthy. I should go buy a boat.
You don't have to pay half and slip, and it's like the rest is free.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think that is all. We will have, we will be having a meeting on the 21st. So please make sure we let Cheryl know about quorum, so she's not calling and chasing everybody down and whatever else. And it's gonna be for 2 pretty big projects. One is the log cabin and the other is the second, the resubmittal of the Alpine Inn project.
So we're gonna continue to do hybrid meetings.
Yeah, I'm gonna be hybrid on that meeting.
Attend that hybrid.
But it does help when you send that notice out or the, hey, remind me if you're showing up, right? Like shortly beforehand, because my schedule is just like hard. I can't predict.
Cool if you let somebody know they're gonna chair a meeting before they show up.
But then you wouldn't show up.
She's afraid you would show up.
See?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Good night.
See?